The first thing we need is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And just a reminder that we are audio and videotaping this session. I'm going to read the vision statement. We're a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. We unfortunately don't have any of our retirees joining us tonight, unless that's changed.
I would say that is strange, and this was something we began, I don't remember how many, two years ago. Unfortunately, there are a dozen retirees, but none of them are available to be here this evening. So that certainly does not paint a picture of them not wanting to be here, but certainly I want to express my appreciation and publicly, I don't know, Mercy, you want to read the names or me read the names? But I certainly think in public we need to recognize people as to when they give the amount of years of service to the district. And this year the collective was 194, is around 200 years of service collectively. Last year there was something in 300 plus years of service. So I don't know if you want to read the names.
Yeah, absolutely. From Newbury Elementary School, we had Doreen Packer, an instructional assistant with 19 years. Joyce Shipley Alders, an instructional assistant with 18 years. Kathleen DeStadler, guidance teacher with 23 years. From Salisbury Elementary was Donald Quill, custodian with 18 years. Ellen Hill Murphy, an instructional assistant with 10 years. Michelle Howard, a grade 2 classroom teacher with 17 years. From the middle school, Mark Wilson, math teacher with 13 years. And from the high school, Betsy Lamb, office clerk with 10 years. Mary Goldsmith, the school nurse with 9 years. Susan Chaccio, I got Patty to give me the one. Special education teacher with 5 years. David Regis, math teacher with 20 years. And Bradford Smith, science teacher, 32 years. So to put some perspective on that, Bradford Smith was here when I was in high school.
Excellent.
Yes. Just a couple of quick things. Deb has kindly offered again to host the get-together for the school committee and administration at her house. She had 2 dates that she had put forward, August 5th or August 12th, leaning toward the 12th because so far from who she's talked to, I believe that seemed to be the more available date. But if you can let her know within the next week or so, is that a good, or unless people know what their availability is tonight? Email her within the next week so we can just get a date firmed up on that. The 5th and the 12th, yeah, of August. It's going to be a little bit earlier this year than we've done in the past.
We had.
Can you grab the mic?
We had talked about it, I think a few months ago. Brian had mentioned it used to be in the summer, and somehow we got it pushed into September. But this is kind of better. It'll be like the week before the meeting, our August meeting. So I think it's a good time.
It's crazy in September.
I know you've probably seen a number of them come through already, but there were a number of end-of-the-year event invites that are coming through from the various schools. So if you can just keep an eye on those. If they require an RSVP, get back to whoever you need to RSVP to. Linda?
Where is Pine Grove's going to be?
The 6th grade celebration is actually in the high school auditorium.
High school.
There is no all-purpose room at the present time. It's big
It wasn't noted anywhere wherever.
On the invitation, it wasn't? Oh, okay.
I was going to say, I haven't seen one from Pine Grove either, I don't think. I've seen Salisbury and Newbury.
Okay, that may be coming. And I would be shocked if it didn't say the high school on it. But I'll confirm. Yes, absolutely.
So we can keep an eye on those. And just one last note, I know that we'll be going through pictures, I assume, at some point in the fall, but if you could just take a look through the website, and if you have updates to the biography that's on the school committee members page, or if you note anything on there, especially for current chairs of subcommittees, anything on there as far as subcommittee information that's wrong, anything that we need to update. I've been going through and I've picked out a few things, but a lot of it's obviously personal or specific to subcommittees, so not necessarily something I have my finger on the pulse for.
Can I say one more thing on the end of year events? If you can definitely RSVP when you get the invitation, just so that they know you're there, so that they can acknowledge you. I know all principals like to acknowledge when committee members are there, but when they like to make their notes about what they're going to say, it's helpful to know who's going to be sitting there, so they make sure they get you when you're standing up. So, of course.
Is there an invite for the middle school? Because I haven't seen one.
I don't know. I'm not sure of any. Someone said they've seen Salisbury and Newbury. I will confirm. I'm not sure where any of those stand at this point. I will confirm with you.
I saw the middle school museum, I believe.
Yep, that went out today.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I've seen anything from middle school other than that.
It's on Friday, so it's not on the last day of school. It's on that Friday at 12:30, I believe. I had it in last month's report. No, it's in this month's report, too. We'll get there.
All right. Any other questions before we move on those topics? All right, excellent. Oral communications from the public. Doesn't appear we have any public, so we're going to move on from that. Subcommittee membership, rather. There's a list of the subcommittee assignments in your packet. Perhaps not surprising, but most people wanted to stay where they were. I think there's a lot of, from what I heard, a lot of unfinished business that people want to finish in their subcommittees, and it just doesn't seem a good time for a lot of people to move on because there are things that are going on. One note that I do need to make on that, that Michelle made me aware of, and I don't know if it's something we want to kind of handle tonight and discuss or not, is that the way is it the municipal finance law? I'm not sure which law it is, but there is a law that determines how we have to sign warrants.
Yeah, it's the law regarding regional schools, municipal finance for regional schools specifically.
Okay. So it says that we have to designate our signers, which has typically been the finance subcommittee. But the problem that we've run into in the past is that we're not necessarily out of compliance, but we're not in compliance either, in not having backups for those people. Should there be situations where there are vacations, illnesses, something where the designated signer from that committee can't come in and sign during that week. So I'm hoping that we can have some volunteer alternate signers, that we can have their names so that, you know, if I happen to be unable to sign on a specific week, I have somebody from my town that's willing to be the first go-to to say, you know, can you come in and sign for me this week? Because, you know, we need to have all those signatures on there. Yes.
Could we just have the whole committee be that? And then because if I'm going to go away and I can't sign, I'm going to ask one of these two ladies right here to sign. So would there be any reason why we just couldn't have the full committee?
Vote, say, all of those who are not on the finance are alternates.
Yeah, that's what, yeah. Can we do that?
I thought we already had that. I mean, is it just that something has to be more formal with, these are the names of the people that would sign?
Just
for
the
you?
law specifically says finance subcommittee. It does not really give any leeway in terms of if a finance subcommittee member is not available. The only other option is the full committee, and obviously we didn't want to have the entire full committee
Right.
resigned to sitting there going through every single invoice that you guys review every week. So I think just as long as we made it formal and saying, you know, the rest of the members are considered alternates
Yeah.
for the purpose of reviewing and signing the warrants.
Okay.
We
So
can
is
certainly
is
do that.
that a motion then? Do we want to
Sure.
do that? Well, I'll make a motion to have the members other than the members of the school committee who are not on the finance subcommittee designated as alternate signers when needed.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Oh,
Brian.
Brian
I
wants
don't
to
think
say
I'm
something,
formally
sorry.
allowed to amend your motion, but I wonder if that can be a statement in regards to all subcommittees. So it's the finance, it's the law about signing warrants that's generating this, but if you just formally have a vote to say all other members of the committee may be an alternate for any of the standing 3 subcommittees. So if it's P&N, technically we have a vote then to say that Deb or Linda could stand in for her if she's not able to make it. Not required, but maybe not a bad thing. And then you have it all tied up in one vote as your Oh, you don't take a vote about the subcommittees, do you?
No, but you could deal with it annually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
You do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So then
Don't we
wrap it all
have?
up in one vote? You're
Right,
done.
for the year.
I'm not sure I like that idea. I think for finance, that's fine, but I think for P&N and policy, where you're already in the work and you need to have some knowledge, a lot of times with finance, there's other people there to answer those questions for you or give you
true, yeah.
guidance. I think, I personally would just like to see it for finance.
Okay, so we'll go with the motion as made. Any other discussion? All in favor? All right, so we've got a unanimous vote. Going along with that, the policy, because I went back to review and make sure that we weren't doing anything untoward in and adding alternates. The policy is pretty specific about how the subcommittees are designated and function. I'll defer to you, Linda. Does policy want to take up looking at this idea of the alternates and see if that wants to be, you want to add or change the policy?
I think we should add it because, like Maureen said, I think we had verbally had said that other people could sign for warrants. So I think if we have it in writing every year, we won't have to keep voting on this. So I think we should change it.
If we put it in policy, we won't have to revote. Is that?
I'm
Or do we
surprised MASC hasn't caught that, though, and added that in the policy since we're doing that review.
I would just say, I think MASC, Department of Ed, everyone's still figuring out the details of regions. So I think that's one of those things there's still subtle differences and nuances that are problematic.
And the regulations and laws are fast and furious.
Yes, yes, they are. But I would guess if you're setting policy, you're taking a vote. So if you're set a policy, you're basically taking a vote and just saying you're not going to do it every year. It's your policy. So I would say that would check the box.
Suffice.
And can I get a motion to vote the Finance Subcommittee as Deb Choate, Maureen Heffernan, Narissa Wallen, Personnel and Negotiations as Monique Grilich, Paul Lees, Dina Sullivan, and Policy and Advocacy as Linda Litkowski, Tina Tsortzis, and Dan Valiente, please?
So moved.
Discussion? All right, all in favor? Unanimous? Okay. On to the consent agenda. To read the donations, we have a Chromebook cart with 30 Chromebooks valued at $10,605 donated by the Newbury Elementary School PTA to provide technology learning to students, and 5 Go Anywhere chairs, 2 weighted lap pads, 2 stand-up desks, and 1 yoga ball roller chair, which sounds really fun, I have to say. Can we get some of those? We can borrow it for the school committee meetings. Valued at $1,015 and a penny. Donated by donorschoose.org for Newbury Elementary School classroom use. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Discussion? Yeah.
Financial reports now, or wait?
Why don't we pull it? You're talking about the B Finance Subcommittee reports?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking? Why don't we pull it, and at the end, we have the subcommittee reports? Can we just address it then? Was that, okay. All right. So we're gonna pull the whole letter B, right? Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda accepting letter B, Finance Subcommittee, please?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimous?
Mister, I made a mistake. It's the
Oh.
expenditure report I wanted to look at. Does
Okay,
it
we'll
matter?
pull the
We'll do
whole thing,
Okay,
so-
all right.
And the student advisory report, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, I'm Sophia Malhoy. I'm filling in for Olivia Valley today. So the graduation for the senior class of 2018 was held on Saturday, June 2nd in the stadium. along with entertaining and encouraging speeches from Triton alumni and Mr. Forget. Valedictorian Sarah Bird and salutatorian Hannah Morgan gave amazing speeches about the past and future of the senior class. The seniors spent the previous week celebrating their upcoming graduation with fun activities like senior prom and a day trip to Boston with the Red Sox game. Though the underclassmen are sad to see their senior friends leave, everyone is very proud of the many colleges acceptances and military enrollments. We are excited to see what the graduates will accomplish after Triton. There was also an awards assembly held on Friday, June 1st, where scholarships and awards were announced for seniors, and acknowledgments were given to freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who experienced success in their various classes and electives. At the end of the awards assembly, the senior class was led to the library for a junior-senior breakfast, and the current juniors marched into the gym where they were presented as the future class of 2019. A junior-senior breakfast was held after the awards assembly in the library, organized by the junior class officers and advisors, along with help from Miss Bebo. The breakfast was served by the sophomore class officers, and the event went very well, with seniors able to enjoy a final occasion with juniors, teachers, and parents, as well as have their yearbook signed before they graduated. Because of the missed performance due to a snow day, a revival of the spring musical Zombie Prom was performed on Saturday, June 9th, which also went very well. Though this last student council meeting was held on May 23rd, the e-board is still holding meetings every Friday for the upcoming school year. Class officers are also thinking about September events, some already holding class votes for homecoming themes. Finals will take place from Wednesday, June 20th to Monday, June 25th, and students have already started studying in all their classes. With the school year coming to an end, students are anxious to take their final exams and start their summer vacation, excited for the last day of school on June 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Does anyone have questions for her? Monique, can you grab your mic?
Just one little comment, and it's not to be critical. The valedictorian is Hannah Bird, I think, isn't it? I only know because we gave her a scholarship.
Yes.
Hannah Bird, yes.
Yes,
Sorry,
okay.
it says Sarah Bird written.
Sarah Bird's
Yes.
Yeah, she's in my class.
Yes, we can correct that. And I want to thank Sophia for stepping in for Olivia tonight. Olivia wasn't able to be here as the normal student rep, so thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Does anyone have anything they'd like to raise? All right, reports and deliberations, the District Communications Committee. So I'll kind of preface this a little bit, I guess. I know a number of you were here at the District Communications meeting that was held on the 24th. It was relatively short. The Rowley indicated, that Joe Perry indicated that Rowley intends to accept the Triton budget. There wasn't a lot of additional discussion beyond that on budget items. We did talk about the alternative assessment. At least from those who are in attendance, there seemed to be a fairly strong resolve that they wanted to move forward on that. So Ronnie Ray-Perot has taken the lead and begun to form that group up. You'll see at the bottom of that item that the current members of the working group are Salisbury Board of Selectmen Chair Ronnie Ray-Perot, Salisbury Board of Selectmen member Freeman Condon, Rowley Board of Selectmen member Vice Chair Joe Perry, and Rowley Finance Committee Chair Larry White. Tonight we do need to vote the dates for next year. In conversation, Brian and I have suggested switching them around a little bit. It seemed, I think, in the middle of things to have in January be getting the governor's budget, and then literally the next night before the school committee has had any chance to discuss anything, immediately have a DCC. So we're getting the information and then immediately having that conversation. So we talked about having the governor's numbers come out on the fourth Wednesday. We typically have our workshop the following Saturday, and then moving the DCC to the Thursday after that, so that we've had a conversation. You know, we've been through like our basic budget process, we have the state numbers, and we've had a follow-up conversation so that we can have a more educated discussion, I think, or a more informed discussion with the DCC at that point. And then also moving the February DCC so that it's just after the tentative budget's voted, because otherwise it was coming just before that was happening, and that, again, the timing seemed better if we could put it just after the tentative budget was voted, so that there, again, could be an informed discussion at that point. So I think we're open to taking, any thoughts on that, but that was the idea in kind of moving some of these dates around. Other than that, we opted to stay on that, is it the first, second, third Thursday, I think it is, of the month at 6:30. Yep.
The one on November 8th, isn't that the meeting on the Cape?
It is, that's the MASC
Oh,
conference.
okay. That we didn't get.
Oh.
That would be a week later would be the, 15th.
Detail mine.
Because we just copied the.
Okay. Good job, Monique.
So yeah, it would be the 15th.
I got their calendar.
Yep, so that'd be Thursday, November 8th. Mm-hmm. No, January 31st. We've already adjusted this based on our conversation, so this is
That's
the
already
new
bumped out a week.
Suggested schedule, just to try and make it flow a little bit better.
I was going to say, so in my mind, that January 31st, we've never had an opportunity to sit, as Narissa was saying, with the towns, and we keep talking about communication and talking about numbers and the reason for the numbers. So if we push it back that week, that meeting, I think that January meeting is really the kind of the focus, because we'll have had discussions through the fall, and we've talked about how to do better projections so that we can be giving a better sense of what's to come. There will always be the unknowns that we can't control. But by January 31st, like Narissa said, you'll have had your workshop, which is the piece that's missing. So we always went into DCC. We got the governor's numbers either the day of or the day before, and then we come to the table. Well, we really can't share much because we haven't even had an opportunity to discuss it with you as a committee. So this gives us an opportunity to come back that Thursday and have a really informed discussion to be able to say, here's where we think we're going for the tentative budget. Here's what the assessments look like. And here's the reason. It's not going to be a budget document. We're going to make it look as unbudgety as possible so people don't take it away and say, here's the first iteration. But we can have a real informed discussion and continue the communication so that the towns are seeing the numbers and the reasons before that budget is presented on February 14th. So, 13th, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, February 13th would be the vote of the tentative budget. So.
Thoughts?
So it goes out a week to the 15th.
Okay. All right. Do we need
We'll
an
put
official?
together. I don't, you're calling that an official meeting, so not a bad thing, but I don't think you need to. No.
Once this is approved, it will be sent to the towns right away, just so they can
Yes,
put it on
absolutely.
their calendars.
Yep. And we'll figure out a way to do that so that it's talking about that January meeting as a kind of a new.
Is there no one from Newbury because no one from Newbury wanted to be on the committee? Is that,
Nobody from Newbury was in attendance at that meeting, and I
Oh.
understand that Ronnie reached out to Newbury and did not hear back. So I think there'll probably be further, yeah.
And I can confirm, as I confirmed at the DCC meeting, that I did correspond with Tracy Blaze and J.R. Colby, who's the chair of the Board of Selectmen, and they re-forwarded an email from a year and a half ago where the Board of Selectmen did consider it and determined that they were not interested in pursuing an alternative assessment. So the statement was, officially, at this time, we're good.
All right. Can we have an official vote then? Can I get a motion to have the district communications meetings at 6:30 in the high school library on Thursday, October 4th, 2018, Thursday, November 15th, 2018, Thursday, January 31st, 2019, Thursday, February 14th. We'll all spend Valentine's Day together.
Yeah.
Again,
Always
yeah.
at a school committee meeting on
2019, Thursday, March 21st, 2019, Thursday, April 25th, 2019, and Thursday, May 23rd, 2019.
I'll second.
discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? And Dina, if I could have you take the MASC Regional Schools report, please.
Thank you. I included some brief notes for the meeting that was held on May 17th. We went over members who had attended the Day on the Hill, what their impressions were. I think they had the same reaction that our delegation did, which was it was nice, but don't know how effective it was. The only good thing was Ellen Holmes, who's the chair of our committee, did meet with the auditor and gave her one of the yellow buses and was thrilled with that. The auditor, of course, is very much in our side, and in fact, one of the recommendations from our group would be to nominate her for one of the awards at the MASC conference. I'm drawing a blank right now, I apologize. But anyway, then the other next bullet point is some of the legislation that is being moved through, which we've all seen before. There's nothing new there. It's all, we focused on what would impact regions. An interesting note was a DESE update. They're looking at the assessment system and looking at teacher attendance. Do you know anything more about that, Brian?
So it's the accountability system?
Yes.
Yes. So I've just recently started to hear about this, and please jump in if you've heard more.
I know they were going to look at student attendance as far as part of their accountability. I have not heard that they were looking at teacher attendance too.
Rumor has it that it's teacher attendance too, and one of the,
Wow.
Chris is confirming for us, one of the members of our committee, they actually have, and I think I shared it with you last time, or PNN when we were looking at our contract, they actually have a, not a clause, but a bonus system in their contract regarding if there's 90% teacher attendance for the year, they get a certain, yes, collectively. And it's worked well for them. Anyway, then we all shared our member updates about how our budget season was going, and I shared with them our sad news, but you know, it's happened to all the districts, so we were in good company, I should say. They had a charting the course on the 19th of May. Tentatively, there might be another meeting in June. Ellen's waiting to see if there's enough people able to come. If so, I will try and attend and have a report in August. One thing that's not on here, I just want to mention it, Narissa, I saw that the Summer Institute is this July 20th and 21st, I believe. I just wanted to make note of that. Narissa and I both attended last year, and I thought it was pretty good, but anyway, I won't be able to attend this year. That's the report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dina? Okay. School committee evaluation process. This is going to be, very similar to the process logistically that we just went through for the superintendent's evaluation. So there will be Google Docs shared with you that you're able to fill out and not necessarily submit back, but if you can just drop an email and just let us know that they're in. If you can, well, I will say, they need to be completed by June 30th by individual members, and then we'll review them at the August 22nd meeting. I know there were a couple of people that had difficulties with the Google Docs. If you can let me know early on in the process so that we can get those issues ironed out quickly in the school committee process, evaluation process, that would be terrific.
We'll get those shared out tomorrow.
Okay.
Can I just make one note on the school committee evaluation process? Since we have Brian's mentor here, I just want to say, if you don't mind me sharing what you shared with Deb and I prior to the meeting, Chris had said she's been coming to our meetings for the last 2 years, and she said she's told other school committees or in the area, in the state, that if you want to see a high-functioning, well-functioning committee, we're it. I think that's high praise, and I think our public should know that.
She's told me I'm lucky many, many, many times. And from what I've seen, she is 100% right.
We're lucky too.
Why would she say that? No, I mean, I'm not questioning. No, I understand. I agree, but I would like to, I'd like to know why she thinks that. Like, what is it that other people, what is it that we do that they not do? And because I always think we're doing what everybody else does.
So I'll give you my interpretation. I think as a committee, I'm on TV.
Helping the evaluation.
That's right. No, I think that school committee members run for office for a variety of reasons. There are those that run for office on a specific issue. I'm running because I don't like, point it out, whatever it's going to be. And then there are committee members who run because they believe in their schools and want to better schools. I think as a collective group, you all, as a group of 9, have your eye on the prize as a district. That doesn't mean you don't disagree. That doesn't mean we don't disagree. That doesn't mean there aren't tensions from time to time. But as a general rule, you all stay very well focused on how we can improve as a district. And you may have opinions where we need to improve in certain areas, and we have those discussions, but then your understanding of the fact of how that fits into the grander plan of how we as an overall district improve. And I feel like that's where I hear stories of committees that are at odds, considerable odds, and end up fighting publicly behind the scenes with the superintendent. And then there's just, it seems like it's based on more on angst than it is on a collective vision of where the committee and the superintendent and administration wants to go as far as improvement. So that's not to say we couldn't improve and fight more and challenge more and agree more and more of anything. But I think as a general rule, you as a group, as a public body, represent your constituents, but come to the table with an open mind and an understanding of there's no one solution. There's no one answer to all the problems. And when you solve one problem in isolation, you're undoubtedly going to create another problem somewhere else. So we have to look at it in totality. Agree? Disagree?
Chris, can I interrupt for one second? Can you just grab a mic? Because I think this is important.
Nope, all good.
If someone were to audit your school committee agendas, I think the scope of the work that you do, the depth of the subcommittee work that you do, your level of involvement in the appropriate way in your schools, supporting the work, attending events, it's really remarkable and has made it very, I wouldn't say easy because this is very challenging. It's been really clear for Brian and his thinking about how to craft the best strategy with his leadership team to support the work of the district, because there are no outlier agendas. There's no outlier behavior. It's the quality of instruction and what's good for your students is really foundational to all decisions you make. And, you know, it would be inappropriate for me to describe other behaviors that I've seen along the way, but I will say to you, you're very fortunate, because it's very difficult for school committee members collectively to monitor and adjust the behavior of an outlier. But they exist more often than not, and it presents really unfortunate challenges, and it really casts the district in a negative light. Mm-hmm. So I commend you.
Thank you, Chris. Oh.
I should just introduce, for those on camera who are watching, that's Dr. Christine Mcgrath, former superintendent, last retired from Tewksbury, but she's now working for the Mass Association of School Superintendents and is a mentor in many ways, but through the new superintendent induction program, she is my formal mentor. So thank you to you as well. Yes?
I just want to confirm what you said, not just in the theory that you said, but having watched it, because if you go back 10, 12, 15 years, there were members of this committee who publicly attacked another member of the committee. So we had seen that, and there were people who, exactly as what you said, they were elected because they had a specific agenda They were going to come in, they were going to fix this, you know. So the committee has evolved in the last 10 years in a great way. And I agree with everything you said, and I know I've seen the other thing, and not everybody over there has seen that, but it wasn't pretty. This is wonderful. Thank you for saying so on camera.
And I think there's also a cautionary tale there that every May there's an election and up to 3 of the committee members can change, and that dynamic can change very quickly, and it can go from high functioning to not high functioning very quickly. And that's about the commitment that you as a collective group have to make sure that you're holding one another accountable. And if and when that does happen again and that challenge presents itself, that I believe this group is high functioning enough that you would challenge that behavior and take it head on. So,
Can I just speak lastly to the accountability part too? It's interesting to me that just about half, maybe less than half, of all school committees actually do a self-evaluation too. So I think it's commendable for us to go through this process and to try and hold ourselves accountable. I mean, I find it difficult to do a self-evaluation. You know, you try and look at the good things and not ignore the bad, but you know, you want to think that you're making progress. So I think it's a worthwhile process.
I just want to add one more thing lastly, and that is just I think that a big function of why this committee has existed the way it has and how it's been run has been the leadership within this committee. And Dina and Deb, I just tip my hat to you because I think really as the leaders of this committee for the last, 10 years or whatever, I think that really has moved the committee in a certain direction.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Any other discussion? Okay. If we can move on to the district strategy for improvement, the end of year progress update, please.
Okay, so I'm going to attempt to do this quickly, which since my evaluation's later on the agenda, I'll be motivated to do that. And I'm also going to ask Michelle, Kim, and Dave to jump in wherever they feel like they should, and I might defer to them for some items. Some of these I'm going to go over quickly. They're items that we've talked about in other superintendent reports, just routine updates. Others you haven't heard about in some time. And after I go over this, what I would like you to reflect on as we're presenting this information is, it's listed in the agenda. Are there things that you believe are not in this district strategy that you believe should be as we revise for next year? Because again, a plan is only as good as it's how dynamic it is. So we developed this plan last fall, provided an update midwinter. Now end of year, the next task is for me to take this away, develop, revise. Are some strategies complete? Are some too lofty and we're not ready there? Start to maybe make a multi-year trajectory. But if there are things that you believe should be on this plan as we redevelop and you approve it again as the new district strategy for 2018-2019, it'd be helpful to know those things now so that we can do some research and thinking and then have a formative discussion in August before we bring back to you a revised plan in September, I believe the September 12th meeting, for approval.
Can I just ask before you get started, because I foresee that there will be questions on this. Do you want to take them by item, by objective, is there?
I would say it's probably easier for you all if you just ask questions by item. I think they're big enough chunks that we would just take them as we go through. So starting with the middle school, high school line schedule, we've had lots of discussion about this. Just to provide a brief update, completely aligned, 7-day, 6-period rotating with a drop schedule. We're still continuing to look at the finer detail of how an intervention block is going to exist in the middle school schedule. So all that to say that's still a work in progress. The more time goes on, the more we realize the potential of this middle school schedule for middle school students, for both enrichment, potential for electives and advanced challenge, as well as an opportunity for interventions where we didn't have a place prior in the schedule to be able to document and provide those interventions. So I believe it's a win-win. Again, to confirm, it does require that we do not have teams at the middle school, but I believe that it can be structured in a way that they won't be teams per se, but the majority of kids will be able to be contained in a general area rather than going from one end of the building to the other as classes change. Any questions about the schedule? I think that's one we've probably had a lot of discussion about, so not too much. In regards to the review of special education, this has certainly taken on a bigger scope than originally intended. And I think the reason for that is as we've identified the areas of concern, it unpacks new questions. And so at this point in time, we have completed an initial records review. And then from that records review, a survey was developed for all parents of students who are on an IEP through special education and all internal staff, not just special education, all regular educators, instructional assistants, administrators, classroom teachers, everyone took the same survey. So from that data, we have a 30-page document analysis that's not ready for public consumption yet. From that analysis, we're developing survey questions, and then Alan Bloom will be coming back in to survey, remember the dates, there's 3 dates in October that we have on the books. We were going to try and forge ahead and get those interviews in now, and we decided that not a good time of year if we're trying to get people's true perceptions about how things are going as it's getting warmer and people just want to be, they're looking outside the window at the sunshine. So we agreed it made sense, let September happen, get everyone back to school. By the beginning of October, we're back in the groove and people are feeling good and we can get a good representation from those surveys. Those interviews. So that will include parents, that will include staff, and we're in the process of setting those up. I should say, I'm going to ask you to introduce, she's not here, but we do have someone that stepped forward to lead the PAC, the CPAC.
Yes, she's...
Maybe we don't say a name yet because she's
Correct,
considering
yes.
it.
Yes, we are. Our plan is to get back together in August.
Okay.
But I am hopeful that she will step forward.
Okay.
I just
There
don't
is
want
someone
to
who has
announce it now.
expressed interest who has not yet committed, but we've made progress there because that's something, as we know, Renee Toth had been the CPAC chair for, I would just say, years, and did step away. And so we've been trying to work with the parent population to see if there's someone who would step forward. So someone has expressed interest. I thought it was a little more than interest. I think I was hopeful. But there's...
want to say it on record.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. So hopefully by the time we get to September, we can say and introduce a new CPAC president, and there'd be some progress there again. So that by September, what I will be providing to you and working with Dave McGee is kind of a multi-year trajectory about where we see this going. There are certainly things we've identified, some specific trainings on very technical aspects of developing an IEP that we can say, we know we need to provide some training and we can work to establish that for next year. But as we go through the, let me say this, ultimately we believe it's a cultural change that's needed. And I think we've had this discussion before, and it's not unique to Triton, but it's very easy to separate students who are on an IEP and students who are not on an IEP. And so to have a culture where all our students are all our students and all our teachers are all our teachers and everyone's working together for all our students can be difficult. And that obviously, as you go through the grade level trajectory, that becomes more apparent. So ultimately, that's the goal, is to get to the point where we're dealing and addressing the cultural issue and we're taking the technical approach to get there incrementally. I'm a firm believer in you can do technical change easily. Adaptive change is hard, and it takes time. And if you rush it, you don't have sustainable adaptive change. So, so that's the plan. Is we've made good progress. It's certainly slower progress than I anticipated. I'm not displeased with the progress because I think that we're uncovering more and more information and finding more areas where we want to look. But we would have along with this plan, the district strategy, we would have a separate plan, just a kind of a multi-year trajectory about where we see that plan going in the coming years. Any questions about that?
Linda?
And the surveys, are you surveying students as well?
We have not done students, but that is actually that's a good point. We could.
We talked about that at one point and decided no as a start. I remember in an early discussion. Obviously, older students provide better, more reliable data than
Yes.
younger students.
That's
but
the students I was
Yeah.
referring to.
yes.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Also, in the multi-year trajectory, is co-teaching in that multi-year trajectory?
So I would say co-teaching is something that we have documented as a priority right on through the Triton Regional Teachers Association agreement. If you look in the Triton Teachers contract, it talks and speaks to our desire for co-teaching. The plan that we would have ready for September is a trajectory about where we're going as far as steps about how to unpack things, including things like the interviews. And then that trajectory would be pacing out from those interviews. We're then going to go to finalizing a report. So the trajectory wouldn't necessarily, we just created a new word, it's called the trajectory. That September document isn't going to necessarily say we need to fix co-teaching, we need to fix PLEP A, PLEP B, whatever, any of those technical aspects. It's going to be a plan about how we get from here to where we want to be. Is co-teaching in the mix? It is the top of the chart, unequivocally. Co-teaching happens well when there's a culture that supports it.
Monique? And can you grab a mic, please?
Just curious about, when this started, it started as a file review and survey of how comprehensive the service was. And then you uncovered some, I'm just guessing now,
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand it. You uncovered some problem areas and thought you should move forward more than you thought you were in the beginning.
No, so I would say initially we wanted to evaluate the middle school and high school service delivery model and special ed instruction. And then as we talked more, and I think we're fortunate to have Ellen Bloom as the outside consultant. And I think in one email, Brian sort of, I don't know if this is exact words, but I want you to rip the Band-Aid off. So I don't want a canned, because some school districts do a canned special ed review. They have a consultant, they come in for 20 hours, they generate a report. But this is, it ended up being a comprehensive, we wanted to see if we're having issues with students' progress in middle school and in high school, it only makes sense to go back to elementary school. So no, it wasn't, the record review is just one piece. That's just one small piece, just to look at the IEP and the development. And then he wanted to look at, staffing models. Co-teaching is one model. Our school does not have a lot of co-teaching in terms of, we have different models. So it was to look at the model of instruction, then also the culture, just how do special ed teachers and regular ed teachers work together. So it wasn't that the record review uncovered something that was so problematic we said we have to go further. That was just one piece of the puzzle.
At one point,
I was just going to say, when I'm rethinking my words, I don't know that there's anything we've identified yet that we didn't already know was an issue. I think where the time has, or the extended time, is more about the process to get that information and identify it. So that, and I think I'm talking about that where I made it sound like we're learning more things. It's really about the depth in the process that Alan's leading us through as a consultant. That's his job. And like I said, I used those words. And then I agreed, maybe just slowly but surely rip the Band-Aid off, not all at once.
Sure, it's sometimes better just do it all at once.
Just do it all at once. But to just, is how we unpack that. So that's where it's taken longer with Alan's guidance to and one of the things I just wrote myself a note to do is we can share with you the actual surveys that went out. I mean, the data is collective, and it's, we need to, anything we give you is public, so if there's information in there that's not redacted, and we need to clean that up. But certainly we can share the survey questions so you can see the questions and know exactly what was asked.
I'm glad you're bringing up that co-teaching model, because at one point when we were in teacher negotiations, remember we had talked about having the teachers involved in setting up some parameters or some kind of a statement of support or some kind of a situation where we would have a culture change. So I'm glad this guy is, Mr. Alan Bloom, is leading you in that direction, because I think it's something we've known for a long time. Just my impression.
Absolutely. All right. So moving on to 1C. I'm sorry, this is taking longer than I thought. There goes my evaluation. So in regards to the process, so it's evaluating the process, the tools, and Kim, please jump in here where you would like to, for that transition from 6th to 7th and then 8th to 9th. I think the key message here is we have, again, now iReady is elementary through grade 9. This past year was the first year we had complete iReady data, consistent tool for that grade span. We've had good data at the elementary school. It's developing in the middle school. We're working on it at the high school. So the transition from 6 to 7 is a much more informed, is that a good way of describing it, Kim? Process. We're improving our data in 7 and 8 so that the process, the transition from 8 to 9 can be more and better informed. What else do you want to say about that?
I would just say that I think from 6th to 7th grade, you have the iReady data, you have your district data, you have the writing assessments, MCAS, we look at social and emotional. We actually look at the intervention that they have just left or they've had over the past 3 or 4 years, because as we move them on and they've gotten support at that 6th grade level or earlier, and then they get no support as the content and the difficulty increases, we want to make sure that we have supports in place. Now, I think the gap that has existed that will no longer exist next year is that, yes, we have this wonderful form that you can fill out all this information about a child, but then where do they go? We had no place to put them because of the schedule. So at the middle school, I think one of the big celebrations for this year moving into next year is now we have that data, we have that information, and we actually have a spot to put them so that we have skilled teachers in particular areas, whether it's literacy or math. But in addition to that, and this is another thing to celebrate, is that not only are we providing interventions, but we're looking at those transition guides to also offer enrichment. So enrichment for people who have scored really high on the MCAS map, or just some way so that there's no ceiling for that learning. And I think at the middle school level, as students have other social and emotional needs, they somehow get disengaged with curriculum in school, and so this is another way to ignite that passion for learning or keep that passion going. So I feel like we're at a good place now with those transition reports, and we have a structure to place them. I think where we still need to do work is at that 8th grade level going into the high school, because they do have the data, and we can put that and pull that from Aspen, which has been great use of technology, so so that it's not something laborious where the teachers have to fill in all these scores. It actually just uploads from Aspen. But then to take that information going into the high school, but then having a structure at the high school where those students can go to get the additional support and not just be in a leveled class. So again, it's not just about the form, but where, after you have that form and that information, where do you put them within a structure that's going to provide those students what they need? And so it's moving, and I think you know, when you talk about that adaptive and technical change, making a transition sheet and putting in numbers is technical. We can do that. That's not the problem. But it's that adaptive change to have everybody understand the benefits of this structure that can exist within a school that really provides for these students in a way that we have not been able to do in the past. So we're on the road.
All right, we have all the meaty ones up front. Okay. So homework, fairly quickly. Monday night, the group met. Some of you were there. The charge of the group was to come up with guidelines that reflect research, best practice, and the opinion of the parents, teachers, students, and administrators that are part of that group. The group has been meeting throughout the year, sometimes in grade level groups, sometimes, or I'm sorry, elementary, middle, and high, sometimes as a whole group. Have had some interesting, challenging discussions. Started off with a belief statement, and then from that belief statement developed guidelines. It's always hard to build consensus in a group that size, but I certainly want to thank that group and for Kim Croto for being the shepherd of that group, because it was a herd going in different directions at times, as homework is, there are so many beliefs about homework. So I feel like we're at a good place. That committee will recommend, based on what happened Monday night, it was redrafted based on that feedback and shared out with the committee when they believe, or the working group I should say, when they believe it's in a place where they all think, yes, this is what we want to recommend as a group, it goes to me. There are still some things I'm grappling with, whether or not I agree on, and as the way they are written. I would then make changes if there's different beliefs about policies about homework, and I need to actually check in with Mike Gilbert, because my understanding, I believe he said that there should be no such thing as a homework policy. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so good answer. So if there is a homework policy, it should not be a 9-page document that is a guidelines or a regulations document. So if there should be a policy document, that's my job over the summer to tease out what the policy should be, and then from there the rest become guidelines. You would vote the policy, I would then share with you the guidelines that fit within that policy. Any of the tweaks that I'm looking at from the document that came through on Monday, they're not major earth-shattering changes, and I don't even know if I believe they need to be changed, but that's the process, so that by September we have those guidelines in place to share with families, students, teachers, and then I think the common themes were consistency and communication. Over and over and over again we talked about consistency and communication. So consistency is hard when we have 200 and how many classroom teachers assigning homework, and among those, call it 210 classroom teachers, there are probably 207 different opinions. So we'll never agree on every aspect of it, and so the goal is to create guidelines that give teachers some autonomy, but also put those parameters to make sure that kids aren't spending 7 hours a night on homework and becoming overburdened, and that there's purpose behind what homework is intended for. So any questions on that? Yeah.
It would go into the handbook as well, right?
Yes, it would. Yes.
It's actually a part on the handbook that says update with new homework guidelines.
Because that's also.
That's a later action item on my report.
No, I'm just saying, that was another comment from Mike. It should not be policy, it should be regular.
It should be, yes, it should be handbook, yes, yes.
Our whole policy should go in the handbook.
Just be done and make it easy.
I have one question.
Sure.
I attended all of those meetings except for this last one Monday night intentionally. I saw a lot of good conversation. I saw a lot of varied opinions. My question is, when this comes back to us to be implemented next year, what happens if a teacher or a group of teachers don't want to follow what we have forward?
Then we have a problem, because at the end of the day, my job as a superintendent is to put policy in place. I determine how that policy is to be enforced in a way that's consistent and in the best interest of students. You may not agree with what I decided about what is in the best interest of students, but from that point, there's no option. The most important piece coming through this, and we kept talking about consistency, is it's not just consistency in communication, it's consistency in expectation.
Right.
So some of the challenges in the existing policy is it was set up for failure when it couldn't be enforced. So there's the challenge in writing guidelines that allow for some autonomy, but when we provide that autonomy, they're not ignoring the guidelines. You know, AP, we kept talking about AP, AP. AP is an animal unto itself.
Right.
You're trying to, literally complete a college course in an academic school year. You can't do it in classroom time alone. So we know that is a separate expectation, not exempt from the policy. It's listed in the policy because the purpose is still the same. The guidelines and beliefs are still the same. We just know if you're taking that commitment, there's more expected of you. So we even had debates about that word exempt from the policy. It's not exempt from the policy. Guidelines. So when those guidelines, when I finalize those guidelines, I will be finalizing a document that I believe we as a leadership team have agreed makes sense for students and mostly informed by feedback from parents, teachers, and students and administrators that have been part of that dialogue. And if someone doesn't agree, and I don't have to guess, there absolutely will be some, they still have to follow the guidelines. So the opportunity, the process was to make sure people were heard. I listened, I'm still listening, and I will continue to listen. And that's not to say, any good document breathes and it changes. And that's not to say that after a year we realize, that wording, not good. Need to be a little bit, change that here. So, yeah, consistent expectations. All right, so moving. Do you want to take 1E, Kim? You could probably do it more succinctly, and then
we continue to strengthen our literacy practices across the district. I think you can see within or from our MCAS scores, we continue to improve in that particular area. That's not to say we don't have more to grow or areas to grow. Very exciting for next year is that the Bay State readers will be working with the teachers and the principal over at Salisbury Elementary School, and that is funded through a donation that was brought forth to Jim, and he is going to support some of it through his Title I funds, but the majority are through a private donation. So.
It's a $75,000 commitment per year. The private donor funded $50,000 of it. So Title I will cover $25,000, and it's a 3-year commitment?
2-year.
2-year commitment. I thought it was 3.
Oh, I thought it was, 2 or 3.
Either way, it's a lot of money that's provided by, and it wasn't a donor to Salisbury. There's a foundation through the Bay State Readers Institute that focuses on schools that qualify and are in need. So it's exciting. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for Jim. I know he's excited about it. And so you notice there's something for Salisbury, not anything for Newbury and Pine Grove. Newbury, Pine Grove, and Salisbury have continued on their focus and efforts on literacy instruction. Salisbury is noted here because of the fact that they are receiving that Bay State Readers Institute grant. So,
I just have a question. Is this replacing Wilson, or is it in addition to
No.
Wilson?
This is more, so Wilson is for Tier 3. It's for the struggling learners. This is actually for Tier 1. We've noticed that some of the progress over at Salisbury has flatlined, and so having some experienced literacy specialists coming in, and first what they'll do is a lot of observations within the Tier 1. I think because of the population over at Salisbury, there has been a lot of attention with Tier 2 and Tier 3. Tier 3, and they have made tons of gains in that particular area. But I think at this point, what we really need to do is focus on the Tier 1, and that will also help Tier 2 and Tier 3. So with the experts coming in, they'll do a lot of observations, collect some data, and then make some recommendations, and truly work within a coaching model. It's not just a PD that's going to be delivered and then they'll come back 3 months later. They are going to be part of that school, working with all of the teachers as well as the reading specialist and Jim and the assistant principal, because if you want to improve literacy scores, it really has to be a school-wide movement, and it also happens at the principal and the assistant principal level too, because they'll be going in and doing evaluations. So it is going to be a big 2-year commitment. But if you've looked at any of the results from where Bay State readers have come in, they have unbelievable gains in what they do with the students as far as achievement. So.
And we had talked about a more formal presentation with Jim and the folks from Bay State Readers Institute. And obviously we're not ready at this point, but in the fall, that would be something when we're fully rolling and committed that we would bring back to you as far as a formal presentation. Any other questions about 1E?
Well, I have a question that in the high school, it lists the reading specialist here.
Oh, we didn't talk about the middle school and high school. So up through now, the reading specialist has been in place. As of next year, the reading specialist is not in place. It was a cut. I mean, I don't know to say much other than that was not, we were, it would not be, it's a position, again, I would say, and I believe we said this during the budget process, it's a position we could probably utilize better when the structure is in place at the high school where that model would provide more results. And that's not about the person, that's about the structure and the way classes and are formed and run. So at this point, they're
I'm fully aware of it. I'm just making note that it.
yes, noting again. Yes, we would like to have that back.
No, I'm just saying you might want to take that out of your.
Well, this is a year to date, so this isn't the revised one. This is what we've done to date, and we have done that to date. She is still the reading specialist.
Is there any way that the middle school can help with any of this?
Say that again.
Middle school reading specialist to help in this aspect of what you're trying to accomplish here.
Kim's jumping in.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking. So there's 3 separate categories, Salisbury, middle, and high school. And then beyond that are just 2 smaller blurbs about special education teachers and even reading specialists across the district who we continue to train and give support through programs like the Wilson. So the Wilson is releasing a new edition, and we're training all of the reading specialists as well as the special educators. So that's just a general statement. It's not specifically, even though it's under the high school, it's kind of global. So that's where that clarification comes in, I think.
But there is opportunity. I mean, there isn't currently. I think you're talking about using the middle school reading specialist to provide support at the high school. I would say ultimately, my goal is that we're at a place where we're providing targeted instruction enough at the middle school so that is addressed and remedied at the middle school. I don't know if anyone would agree with that, but in the structural schedule, no, there is no support in the middle school or in the high school for the middle school specialist. 1F, elementary continues to work on win and flex time, again, depending on which school calls it which. Again, the focus on really targeting data, and I like the phrase Kim used, to make sure there's no ceiling on students' learning, that if they're needing extension, that's provided, and if they're needing more targeted intervention, that's provided. And then we did already talk about the schedule at the middle school is going to afford an opportunity that it does not exist now. Moving on to objective 2. No questions. We continue to, and again, I feel like we've had more discussions about these. We continue to implement the K-8 science curriculum. We continue to adapt, continue to adjust what we do and what we're able to complete within a year as far as the content. That is something that we are continually monitoring, and then in the next, well, it's with the math. I'll wait till we get there. Do you want to say anything else about the science?
Well, with the science and math, both of those programs that are being newly implemented, each year we develop an implementation plan that really goes in depth about the needs of what the teachers need to be successful, what type of supports need to be in place, and any type of additional training, as well as looking at the data. So in this kind of brief description, it really represents a year, or if not more, work to generate a plan that is going to be comprehensive, that's really going to give teachers and students what they need as they progress. There have obviously been some hiccups in the road with the science curriculum, especially STEM Scopes. STEM Scopes has exploded as far as it being a very popular science curriculum out there. Because of that, and because of the fact that it's online, that it's constantly changing and getting updated, and sometimes too fast, because we've noticed some of the information that they have has not been accurate. So we have very strong science teachers at the middle school, and they are quick to pick up on that. We are also just still trying to align, or it's like a moving target with the state as far as their adoption of their state standards, and then pulling in STEM Scopes to make sure that we're giving kids a good kind of comprehensive view of the science that needs to be taught. But I think overall, for the first year, it was successful. We were able to, when there were problems, we were able to pull people together to talk through them, work collaboratively to develop plans and next steps. So I think if you've asked the teachers, they would say that it has been successful. I don't know if any of you who have children could talk about any of the science, but so far, so good. So far, so good.
Okay.
I have one comment. I just want to commend the teachers and the administration for budget constraints that you're able to come up with a plan like this.
And the school committee for supporting this plan,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
I mean, even through these challenging times, we were able to implement a new math program and a new science program, and for the teachers, because it has been a lot of work for them as well. So across the board.
Okay, 2B, I think we've had quite a bit of discussion about the life skills curriculum that's being taught in 4th through 8th. Just to note that next year we're going to add that some content at the 9th grade through their PE classes. And again, to note, we have not arrived as far as the way we teach health and wellness. We have a lot of work to do. Life skills is a gap filler at this point. Kim did speak about the Math in Focus adoption. The one thing to note is that second paragraph that the group did. The initial implementation or original adoption committee did come back to the table and say, okay, after 3 years, how are we doing? Where are we going? Are there things we need to adjust? Scope, trajectory, content. And so I know I got there at the end. Was so excited to be part of it. I walked in as they were wrapping it up. But I know that was a very productive meeting. So for the folks who originally decided on this curriculum, to say it's still the right curriculum, but here are the things we need to improve and tweak. So again, always looking to refine and improve. As far as assessment data, at the elementary, we certainly, we've had this discussion repeatedly. We have lots of different data in different formats that are used to drive instruction. At the middle school, it's emerging more. It's becoming more ingrained in the culture. Still a work in progress. At the high school, we still continue to need to develop that. As we have departments and leveled classes, it doesn't inherently lend itself to that discussion about data and then targeting need that way. So that's still an absolutely a work in progress. Any questions about that? Keep taking my glasses off and I can't see. As far as relevant technologies, we certainly have had that discussion. I'll report to you. You have an updated superintendent's report to note that Triton Education Foundation is funding. Alan had requested, I believe, at one point, two Chromebook carts. We need technology across the board, but the most glaring need is our ability to do computer-based testing for MCAS across the board, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10, and all content by 2019, right? Everything's computer-based by spring of 2019. So TEF is funding an additional Chrome cart for the middle school, and they're doing it on a lease, which is a good thing. So thanks to them. So we continue to increase as we can, but we tend to be funding the basics, the data bandwidth, and in the general budget, and it's groups like TEF that are funding the technology that we don't have already funded through the lease lines. Linda?
When you're doing all this testing at once, will our infrastructure be able to handle it?
Yes. So I think it's 3 years ago now, we lease all of our wireless access points, so those are rolling off. So new access points, we just renewed our Comcast contract after 5 years, and the bandwidth is multiplying by 5 times. I mean, it was 100 megs to each school. It's 500 megs. It was 400 megs here. It's going to be 2 gigs to this campus for only a little more money than we were paying before, just because of as time goes on. So yes, those are the pieces that we're funding in the budget. It's the bandwidth. It's the access. It's the devices. We're unfortunately relying on education foundations and PTAs and stuff to fund. But the capacity is absolutely there. The bandwidth, I should say.
I know the middle school in the past has been kind of the biggest gap as far as Chromebooks.
Mhm.
Can you give us an idea of, with the new devices, kind of what the district overall looks like as far as where there are gaps?
I want to say the 2 at the middle school would close the gap, because generally what they were doing is they were borrowing high school Chromebook carts. There's obviously less of a need with the amount of testing that happens at the high school. So anytime they were testing, they basically shut down all the carts here and rolled over. I believe 2 carts would have resolved the issue, so we're halfway there at the middle school. And I believe between Chrome carts and labs at the elementary, we're still down Salisbury. So we still have a gap to fill. I forget who asked the question. You asked the
Big one,
question.
a small one? I'm just trying to get an idea of where we're at as far
I will
as-
get that information for you. Yeah.
I just have one other question. With the PTA buying Chromebooks, are they on lease, or do those at some point get obsolete and then we have to buy brand new?
The Chromebooks that TEF is just now purchasing for the middle school are a lease.
I meant the PTAs.
This is the first time any outside group has funded a lease. Every other institution for savings, and again, we're not, not sad about the money,
No.
but it's an outright purchase.
Okay.
So TEF understands the need for a lease cycle. That could mean that at the end of 3 years, they've got the money in the bank for 3 years' worth of payments. That could mean at the end, if they're not able to replenish that those Chromebooks go back and don't get replaced. But I would still argue that's better than having clunker devices that become paperweights and ultimately financial responsibility that we don't want to own those. But yes, so everything else that's been donated has been a purchase across the board. All right, make myself notes. I didn't do 2F. Do you want to talk about that, Kim? You love talking about wellness. 2F at the top.
So last time, I think I gave a short presentation just about the wellness domains, physical, emotional, intellectual, occupational, social, and emotional. We had that recent review around those different domains, looking to find out where those gaps were. As Brian mentioned, we certainly have in place something for substance prevention, but we don't have other areas. One in particular that I mentioned prior is the reproduction and sexuality standards that are part of our Mass state standards. So looking to work with the school nurses to expand on what the 5th and 6th graders get regarding puberty, and just kind of spiraling that up to a few classes in the 7th and 8th grade. That is definitely not a full curriculum, but it is at least addressing and meeting the standards that are required by the state. We will continue through the wellness group and myself looking at the health standards to find creative ways as we continue to hope that a wellness teacher gets put into place. But we felt like it was too important to just kind of sit on a shelf and wait, that our students really need kind of a full comprehensive health. So that's where we are. We're continuing to make some gains in that area.
No questions. Moving on. Objective 3, PBIS. So we have pretty close to full implementation. At Newbury and Pine Grove, it's very much fully implemented. You can tell it's in the culture. There's meetings specifically. There's committees specifically for, at Pine Grove, the Committee for a Positive School Culture. It's, staff meeting agendas. You see the evidence of it. At Salisbury, they're continuing their efforts. It's still a work in progress. They've committed to it. They have the school-wide rules, the expectations. They've had a busy year. So again, PBIS, I think we've had this discussion several times, it's a culture change. It's not just a technical change. So in order to have it effectively implemented, everyone in the building has to be on board because it's about setting common expectations. At Salisbury, the expectations are there. It's about everything else that's going on, for lack of a better phrase. At the middle school, there is still pockets of belief that it's the most effective. I believe Al, as the principal, believes it's effective. It isn't universally believed to be the most effective approach at this point, I would say, at the middle school, across the faculty and the staff. So there is still evidence of it, but it is not progressing at this point. There's obviously been a lot of discussion and focus on the schedule and alignment and how this intervention block works within the schedule. So that's certainly taken a lot of time, but for everyone. But progress has not been made much there. And then at the high school, there hasn't been any progress with PBIS at this point.
Is the lack of buy-in due to lack of need? I mean,
Is it due to lack of need?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have kids that are well-behaved and everything goes smoothly and everybody just knows how to act.
Yeah.
And I know it's rare these days, but I mean, there are situations where that occurs. So I'm wondering if they maybe just think, we can just handle things the way we normally do and we don't really need it. Is that part of it?
Could that be? Absolutely. And I will say, I'm not going to say grade levels specifically, but there are always grade levels that en masse, the crowd effect is the collective there's no science behind it, but if you talk to any teachers, you have classes that come through and you just think, what was that? And then you have other classes where you're thinking, how is it this easy? What's happening? So we've certainly had a kind of a this over the last handful, not identifying classes, going through this secondary level. So I would guess that certainly that adds to it. When there isn't specific challenge that is needed, then it's not seen as a remedy. I think also so you have to build the culture to understand how the PBIS model affects all behavior. I think some people look at it and see it's a remedy for specific behaviors, but that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with X. I get it that it addresses Y, but what my concern is about X. But it's not. It's about expectations and behaviors and setting that whole school culture that we're all responsible for all the students. Students are as responsible as the adults and so forth. So, so is that a factor? I would say the answer is part of, but I believe it's probably more complex than that. Yeah.
To me, this is an important one, because when we had that presentation by Tina Lose and the students, culture was a big issue. So my question is this in the middle and the high school? I know this is new for them, but is it because leadership hasn't bought into it, or is there a way that we can support getting the vision and the need for this known by all?
So I don't want to pin it on administration, because I believe it's bigger than that. But I think there is a need to focus on it, to set it as a priority.
Let me clarify one thing too. By leadership, I don't mean just just administration. There are leaders within the teachers, within the aides, within the students even. Are there ways that we can make that importance known to them, to work with those individuals to change that culture?
I would say there were definitely teacher leaders at the middle school who you heard from, who you saw, who were energized and engaged, and they haven't had the traction they would like. So that certainly adds to it when you're trying to do something that really requires a whole school. You can't do that in isolation on an island. But if the traction isn't there, obviously that gets frustrating. So I would say, is there overall leadership collectively? Yeah, there needs to be buy-in on the concept. And I think it's closer to that point at the middle school, understandably, developmentally, than at the high school level. Yeah. Not writing it off as a done deal, but also, acknowledging we haven't made the progress we had hoped.
Yeah, and I think this is an area where we can utilize Tina's expertise and try and bring in some of those programming or whatever to boost that. I think that's important.
And the challenge will be, Tina's an amazing resource, funded for 3 years through the Tower Foundation, but there aren't resources for the towns and the schools to bring in that kind of programming and to have that level of staffing. So my fear is great things, but if that energy doesn't yield someone who wants to step forward within the towns, because collectively or ultimately, the schools are part of the solution, but it's the towns. It's supporting across the towns.
But all the more reason why, since we only have Tina for 3 years, we need to start now to see what traction we can get within the communities. I'm certainly willing to work with her on that.
Absolutely.
Marissa? So I just want to, again, talk about what Dina did. I think it's really important, okay? At the high school, you're not going to get that kind of buy-in now because the students haven't been exposed to it. But, PBIS is a new program. But, Brian, in the middle school, you really need to pick it up because the kids from Pine Grove and Newbury, where they've been exposed to this, in order to carry through all the benefits that you have, to let it go at the middle school is just a huge disservice. And I'm confident Jim Montanari will get his arms around it in time and become part of that. So, I mean, the leadership at the middle school, the teachers that are energized, I really, really think that it needs to, because of the way our society is changing. It's really very, very important.
Agree.
With these kids going through it at the elementary school, I think they're probably going to expect it at the middle school,
Yeah. And like we said, even the language is different, but the concept is the same. So whether, regardless of the initiative and what you're calling it, whether it's NES Cares or, it's the same level of standards and expectations.
Because I think it will unravel at the middle school if you don't continue with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. I agree. Other questions about that? Okay. We talked about the Essex County, what Dina was just mentioning, with Tina Lose and the ECAB, as it's now known, the Essex County Asset Builder Network. So there's certainly great progress there. That's a large focus. And those of you who weren't able to attend the call to action meeting, there is the one, and it was the Georgetown one, I believe, that was videotaped. And we can certainly get that link to folks if they would like to see that. Community service, that's on the table. I would say there's nothing that has stalled it other than we haven't taken up a review of graduation requirements. There are certainly, the policy came up, and that's on the next meeting, right? That was part, or no, did we review that? No.
I think we're still on J.
Yeah. So that's still in the section as far as graduation requirements. But there's nothing stopping that. That just hasn't moved forward as a graduation requirement proposal from the high school principal at this point. Any questions about that? My understanding is there's still support for that. Yes, although it's interesting, I will say, as I met with the the top 15 of the class of 2018 as I was trying to determine who to give to the award, or my award to. Several talked about how there's a concern about that becoming a graduation requirement, because when it's a requirement, it's less genuine and it's less authentic. So it led to some good discussions, because I think that there are many good things that start with an expectation. And when we see it as an opportunity to engage people rather than just an end-of-the-line expectation, and people go, whatever the number is, 50 hours, they check the box. I think there's a lot of people who will do that, engage, and realize, wow, this is actually really good. I'm going to keep doing this well above the 50 hours. So, but that is a concern that I've heard several of the students very articulately state, and I've heard that from others. But I personally believe it's an important piece to add to our graduation requirement.
Is this something that we should probably have school council and student council look at to get their input to see if what their feeling is?
As part of the formal process, absolutely it would be, yes. Any graduation requirement would go through the school council, which would seek input from the student council before it comes. Yes.
But, I mean, is this something that we have, that we are going to put before them in September, is what I'm asking?
There is no current plan about a timeline. We can definitely take that back, put that back on the table, absolutely, yeah.
I guess, where does that plan come from would be my next question.
The plan to put it on the school council, that'd be me setting expectation with the high school principal that this is something we want to move forward.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. I mean, I don't know if I can technically, I'm sure I could, put something on the school council agenda, but it's setting expectation. Yeah. As far as trauma-sensitive schools, we had talked about the Leslie course, and ultimately we would love to be able to make sure every teacher takes that course and have it not cost the teacher. Currently, teachers can pay the $500, I believe it is, which is very, very, very cheap, actually, for a 3-credit graduate course, but it's $500. That does qualify for course reimbursement, so anyone it's well within the limit. So if there is money available in each of the sessions, then certainly teachers can get that for free. But we had talked about a way to make that available to everyone in Mass. Obviously, we haven't figured that out, but teachers do continue to participate in that course, and I think that those who have taken it believe it's, I don't want to say life-changing, but it's a career-changing perspective on the way we need to adapt to those dealing with trauma. So certainly something we want to push as much as we possibly can, but obviously making it happen for everyone is a funding issue that we haven't figured out how to resolve. And also to note that that bottom paragraph, Ellen Lincoln, the social worker at Salisbury, led a session for IAs, obviously not that formal course, but those same principles for IAs, and 17 across the district participated. So that was certainly a great start for sure. Any questions about that? For IAs now, yes. So this is the first, so this was the first year of their contract where they can make progress with, we didn't call them PDPs, what did we call them?
We'd say PD.
Professional development hours, or whatever we called them.
And
But
just to add to that, we had 23 IAs who took advantage of that opportunity, not just this particular one, but across the board, for a total of 604 hours. We offered over 31 different opportunities for IAs to earn those particular professional development hours, and we had some good turnout from that. So I think that was
31 different IAs, right?
No, we had
Or 31 different sessions,
We had
rather.
31 different
Yeah.
sessions. Some were online, some were in face-to-face, some were with consortiums, but
So
Was that an increase, Kim?
yeah.
A lot,
huge
big,
increase.
because of the contract?
Yeah, because of the contract. So again,
I was going to say, it's all an increase, because it didn't
Yeah.
really, there were very, very, very few, if any, a handful, if any, onesie-twosies that were involved because there was no incentive to.
And now
So
there's-
now with that contract
Yeah.
being incentivizing, 23 of 100 and some odd, you're talking about, close to 22, 23% of the IE population participated in advanced training of some sort, one of those 31 different opportunities.
And one in particular was a bar bottling class for Math in Focus, which was after school, which was led by one of our math specialists, and the teachers were working right alongside the instructional assistant. So it was just a powerful professional development. It was over the course of 3 days after school. And in addition to that, we had the instructional assistants trained mentor. So that was another piece to strengthen that for those providers and those teachers. So some positive things in that area as well.
So just to clarify, bar modeling is a math instructional technique. Okay.
He giggles every time I say that.
It's the weirdest phrase. It's cool. I finally understand. I've seen it in action, and it's a neat, it's an amazing instructional tool. It's just an interesting phrase. So are we good on that as far as the trauma efforts? Obviously, no progress on the addition of a full-time wellness teacher. Kim, do you want to talk about the safe and supportive schools or safe and drug-free schools now?
I mean, a few years ago, I had applied for a safe and supportive school grant. We received the grant. The grant was all for this wonderful planning of what you would do in the future to support a safe and supportive school. And that's where the state funding ended, was to create this wonderful plan. The following year, which was this year, I applied for the actual money to support the plan, which we did not get. So next year I will apply again and hopefully get some funding so that all the work that we went into to do all the assessments and make that plan, we will get. But
she doesn't take no for an answer.
I don't take no for, I was very upset. I emailed like 2 times, but still no.
Okay, moving on to objective 4. Expanding the use of Aspen and Google. We don't have any quantifiable data to say this number of teachers were using Google Classroom, this number of teachers are now using Google Classroom, but the number is definitely increasing. I think not just the number, but the depth of how Google Classroom is being used. Beth Andy was just telling me at 6th grade, they as an entire grade are using Google Classroom for submitting assignments and doing things electronically. So it's developing, and it's developing, and it's a good trend. But unless a teacher's ready to teach and use those electronic tools, then it's not going to be effective. So the way it's spreading is teachers who are not using it, seeing it and saying, oh, look how easy that was to fill in the blank. And then people realize it's actually an asset and a tool that helps their instructional practice. Your question? Nope, just adjusting the microphone. Sorry. Well, you can.
Well, my question on that was, and I don't know because my kids still aren't in school yet, but is there a goal to increase usage from the teachers, especially at the elementary school levels? I know oftentimes I see or hear from parents that communication is lacking in terms of events or homework assignments. So reading this, I'm thinking that's probably some teachers that use these systems, some teachers that don't.
Yep. So
is there a way that we not create a guideline to make it mandatory, but I think across the board it would just improve communication.
Agreed.
I would have to see less complaining on social media boards.
Agreed.
And people misinterpreting that.
Well, I was going to say, I can't fix the complaining on social media
Well,
boards,
yeah.
but
That's gonna
we
happen
can
no
do our
matter
best
what.
to improve.
Yeah.
So there are formal expectations for grades 7 through 12. So for homework, it's posted nightly or as assigned electronically. There's a listing on the high school and middle school website now that lists where each teacher posts his or her homework. As far as Aspen, we do not use Aspen for grading at the elementary school because it does not provide a standards-based reporting structure. At the middle school and high school, report cards and grading are done within the Aspen system, and teachers are now required to update grades every 2 weeks. That is something I need to make sure is happening because I believe it was Monday night at the homework meeting we were talking about, and folks saying that that's not happening with regularity, and that's an expectation that's my job to make sure that happens. So at the elementary level, it's different. the grade book and all that communication about grades is happening organically in Aspen at the 7 through 12 level. 4B, my glasses back on, is evaluating another system in Infinite Visions, not Infinite Visions, that's budget stuff, Infinite Campus, that would allow us to do a standards-based report card at the elementary grade level, or at the elementary level, that would allow grades to be updated with the same level of expectations and timelines and so forth. So we don't have a system that allows it at the elementary level now. Google Classroom is more about exchanging information between teacher and student, but information, i.e. assignments, submitting assignments, doing electronic, online learning. So that's more of a learning management system. Aspen is functioning as our information flow, but we don't have that structure at the elementary level. So certainly, I would love to move, if I had a choice, it'd be move to Infinite Campus. I think there are a lot of benefits. There are still some drawbacks in different modules, and everyone can't do everything perfectly, and that's the perfect system, does every aspect of managing our software and information. And there are some drawbacks, but there are some real value adds as far as teachers grading in parent portals. But there's a pretty big price tag to...
How much is the Infinite Campus?
So Infinite Campus, on an annual go-forward basis, would be roughly the same amount of money. The implementation, I believe the last calculation was 65,000. So that's that one time. There was a little upcharge because we wanted to import all, I think it was 5 years worth of data, so that it's not, so we don't have transcript and all that information in one. It wasn't 5, it was all the data. So we have all the system information in the new system. But if that could be fundraised, crowdsourced, then that is something that we could do sooner rather than later. There's still the question is it the right system? That has to be teased out. We've kind of slowed down a little bit in all that testing and trying because we knew there's no change on the horizon and we don't want to get teachers' hopes up. As far as grading and reporting gradebook, any teacher who's seen it has thought, oh my gosh, yes, please. Other challenges have cropped up. So, any questions about that? Any more questions about that?
I don't want to take you back too far, but in the discussion about Google Classroom and saying that there's an entire 6th grade using it, clearly there's an expectation for those students then that as they've gotten older, this is something that's been implemented for them to use, and then they're possibly going to not be using it when they go to the elementary or to the middle school. Is there some communication going on saying this is just this is where the students are right now technology-wise, so that the 7th grade teachers understand that?
Have not thought of that. That's certainly something that can be communicated. I mean, I don't think students will lose the ability to not use the system. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the alternative would be there aren't other learning management systems in play. So my guess is, as time goes on, that becomes more and more the norm. But we can work on communicating that information. Absolutely.
I hate to see those students lose that. If that's become a valuable tool for them that they're used to using, I'd hate to see them lose that just because Newbury Elementary currently is the only, school that's using it across the entire 6th grade.
Yes. So the solution is to mandate that everyone does it. I mean, unless there's a different solution, but I think that's it's about communication or mandating, and I don't know that we're at the mandating everyone uses it.
Yeah, I understand that. I think
more communication. Yeah.
No, but I think there is a case to be said that, we keep talking about the need for technology and funding for technology and everything else. Well, if we want to get away from having TEF or somebody else fund our technology, we need to set the expectation that we have the technology. If you want technology, it needs to be used, and that means K through 12.
Yeah. Please, yes.
The teachers are using the technology. I have to say, I mean, if you go to,
I think it's dead.
Sorry. When you go visit the classrooms, they're using technology many different ways. But we also have to make sure, and I'm just thinking of Salisbury when I went through and did a walkthrough, they had 2 people sharing a Chromebook because they only had 1 Chrome cart per class. So the ELA teacher was using it, and then it was actually the other ELA teacher in the 6th grade were using it, and they had to have 2 students share 1 Chromebook. So again, I think there is no shortage of teachers wanting to use the Chromebooks. I feel like they're very comfortable with the Chromebooks. I can tell you right now, all the online writing assessments, we've moved away from the paper and pencil. Every student, I'm going to say 3rd grade, did we start this year in 3rd grade too? No, not 3rd grade. 4th grade all the way up to 8th grade, they did the district writing prompt in Google Classroom. So they're very comfortable using technology. We use it for math. We definitely use it for science. In fact, the science, they don't have a textbook. For STEM scopes, 3rd grade all the way up, it's the computer. That's where they gain all their information. So they're using it, whether they're using it to communicate to parents, as you would see at the middle school through Aspen. But I would say one of the biggest issues is if they want a Chromebook for their students all the time. They don't want to have to sign out a Chromebook or share 2 people per Chromebook. That's the biggest issue, I think, more so than they're comfortable with it. The students are comfortable with it.
Thank you for saying that, because I think we're talking about 2 different things.
Exactly, yeah.
So
yeah.
we're talking about communication, and then we're talking about in the instructional setting.
Right.
So as an instructional tool, we can share, right? If there's a lesson, we can share Chromebooks around. If we're talking about communication and expectations about submitting assignments, then that's different, because we're talking, otherwise you have to have a one-to-one. If that's going to be the expectation, they've figured it out in 6th grade. If everyone, I echo what Kim said. If we said we're going one-to-one and providing Chromebooks, I believe you would have 98% of teachers saying, "Oh gosh, thank you." Yep. And it would change the way a lot of things function. So it's more about the way, like when you say if we're providing the technology, they're using the technology for what we're providing it for. It's this other communication piece that falls more on, do families have the devices at home to log in, to check? And as you go older with students, they're doing on phones, they're doing on tablets, they're doing it on anything. Sorry.
That brings up another question. Have we ever thought of, because I know they do it at other schools, having parents, students buy Chromebooks?
We did. We talked about that at the high school. So Deb Jones had been working on that and a plan. And then I honestly need to check where that was at, because that was about 1.5 years ago. And it kind of fizzled as far as response.
Why would you only do it at the high school when they need it across every single
as a place to start? So the reality is, if we say to parents, speaking as a parent, if you suggest that I, as a parent, buy a Chromebook for my daughter, and then she's never asked to take it to school, I would have bought her the Chromebook anyway, because it's a useful tool. But there's a lot of parents who would say, you just had me spend $195 on a Chromebook. Why? So until we're ready to say, and I believe this is where it kind of fizzled, it's a requirement, then I'm not comfortable suggesting parents spend money for something we're not going to use. Instead, it doesn't mean that has to be out at every class every single day, but it's a routine thing, a routine occurrence, I should say, that Chromebook or device is being used in a classroom. So then you establish that expectation, and then any family who cannot afford one,
right,
we either have OCR down our back or we're providing one for that student.
Right.
So then we have a device, then we have an issue, and I believe in my last discussion with Deb, and like I said, it's been 1.5 years since we talked about this, we didn't have the numbers of available Chromebooks with existing carts where we'd think we'd be able to safely supplement all the kids who would say, I can't afford it, I'm just going to borrow one. Because you then get into gray areas, and I know other districts have gotten to this challenge, where how do you quantify that? So you have to set a threshold. Is it free reduced lunch? What is that threshold? So I think that's why you see a lot of districts eventually figuring out how to just pay for it. Put a device in every kid's hand. That's not cheap. Certainly Chromebooks make it a whole lot cheaper than it ever was with, you know, when Beverly implemented MacBooks at $1,500 per student. Does that answer the question? So I think I'm up to 4C. Wow. Just put, like, did not meet, like, needs improvement across my evaluation. Talks too much. The internal and sharing of information, it's just not happening. I think I do a great job of communicating with internally and keeping people apprised and sharing information, but the purpose of this was about sharing personal information, getting to know one another across the 425 employees, and I've not figured out how to do that, straight up. Advocacy, I think we've spent enough time talking about advocacy at the committee table. I think you've all spent enough time doing advocacy this year. I would say this has been a banner year for how you as a committee have gotten involved, both in the towns and absolutely at the state level. The work of Support Mass Regional Schools and the fact that there's a Facebook group entity that now is representing or representative of the majority of academic regions in the state, that's significant effort. And if where we have or what we have as a budget as it went into conference committee comes out intact, some small remedy this year, some small token improvements, but a commitment to fully fund regional transportation, circuit breaker, and charter reimbursement moving forward. That's a significant win and hundreds of thousands of dollars for us. So I don't think we need to talk about advocacy anymore. We've done that for 6 months, unless anyone else wants to talk about that. Nice job, everyone. On the advocacy, not talking. The discussion about the annual report continues. Latest thinking, again, PDF document, posted online, postcard, mailed to every home in the district, copies printed professionally in selective locations, senior centers, town halls, realtors, something, you know, small quantity that we can afford. So that's still a work in progress, aiming to get that out this fall. I know Kim would like to note that there's Facebook, there is Twitter, that curriculum, and I, you know, also to note that you've seen other Facebooks and Twitter accounts popping up from across the district. Salisbury Elementary has one now. So I feel like more and more people are engaging on social media, and then it's being picked up and retweeted and reposted. So I think more and more people are able to see, if you're on social media, you're able to see pictures and videos and great examples of wonderful learning happening each and every day. So any questions about that? 5A, the TLLT did meet. It was a great exercise. We met 5 times. Each assistant principal took one of the meetings, and the focus was around calibrating us as evaluators to make sure that if I'm going into a classroom and then my assistant principal is going into the classroom, we're, in all fairness to the teacher, evaluating that teacher the same way. So we identified lots of areas where we're not calibrated. I feel like we also made some progress in areas where we are calibrated. And to commend the 5 assistant principals, because they some of them very new, and took on the role and did some, every meeting was different, creative ways of using DESE resources and model lessons. In the middle school, we Skyped from one room and we watched via Skype another teacher teaching a live lesson and then unpacked that lesson. So it was a great learning experience, certainly something we may not do the exact same thing, but that's something that we absolutely, I want to continue to improve evaluation. And the evaluation tool is called the Professional Growth System for Educators. It's not called the Professional Gotcha System for Educators. And unfortunately, evaluation becomes a check the box thing we're trying to get done, because administrators are, you know, coming in early and writing evaluations at midnight on Saturday to get them done. And that doesn't lend to a quality process that is focused on growth for teachers. So that is something I can tell you that we are going to focus on as a leadership team at our retreat this summer, is how does it become a growth system in a culture where we just have to get it done because there's too many things to do. Any questions about that?
Question about the evaluation system. I'm 10 years out of date, so I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Is there anything in that evaluation tool that examines, I don't know how to say this exactly, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because you've talked about cultural issues.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything in that evaluation in which you talk about how a person fits into the culture or resists the culture, or, you know, is not a part? There are people that are the keepers of the nightmare, and they stop the promotion of good culture.
Yes.
And is there a way to evaluate that? Because people get away with that.
Yes.
Maybe they don't anymore.
So if you look at my evaluation, the standard 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's the same. Obviously, the standards are slightly different, but it's the same standards. So professional culture is standard 4. So there's absolutely a way through the evaluation system to address that. So we've gone through a process at the state level where, as in 2009, this evaluation system first. Is that right? So I always look to my mentor. She always nods. So she knows everything. If you need any answers, go to Chris. So as of 2009, when that system changed, it was rolled out differently depending on where you went and where you worked. So a lot of what happened is, okay, this is new. For now, we're going to call everyone proficient and then work our way into really understanding the system. That's hard. That's hard to call everyone proficient and then get back away from that. So that's not an excuse, but that's the kind of the context to say then it becomes a harder thing to then have those discussions. But unequivocally, the system has a process for us to identify that, address that, if you will. Whether or not that can stand, that's a separate discussion. That can very quickly become a union issue. But I would say that by and large, we have a teachers association that defends process and defends the contract, not bad practice. So when we do our job, and if there is an issue, if we do our job and document it well, we're not going to get undue pushback from an association that's protecting people who are not doing their job. Does that make sense? But to the answer to your question, unequivocally, there's a place for that. Yep. 10-year capital plan. That was part of my goals, obviously. We just need the money. We got to figure out how to pay for that 10-year capital, or the assessment for this campus. It's part of my goals, part of Michelle's goals. The next goal is just going to say find the money. The work that the landlord-tenant working group has done is absolutely progress, because that will ultimately put the capital responsibility for Salisbury on the town of Salisbury, so that it's equivalent across the 3 towns. We just spend our time focusing on the regional campus, and then we just need that assessment to move forward. No questions. Improving the school improvement plans, budget requests, overall final documents. I think school improvement plans were nicely aligned with the district strategy, with these conditions for success. I think the budget request and the overall budget document certainly speaks to the strategy and the focus areas, but I didn't succeed in making it clear, like it is in the school improvement plans, that this request is tied to this condition for success. So that's my hope, is that moving forward, that becomes more aligned, so that everything we're doing is clearly identifiable as something we set as a priority.
This is my own personal whatever, but in going through and looking at other districts' budgets and their budget process over the past few weeks, one of the things that I noticed is a lot of districts have a district budget book, and then they also have a separate presentation that kind of gives the narrative and ties it all together, and doesn't rely on necessarily the budget book to do that talking for the actual process and kind of the overall goals itself. I don't know if that's smart or not. I mean, it's definitely different. I don't know.
Yep.
It's just one thought on kind of how to address.
So then they're posting the budget document and the presentation as a separate entity.
Yeah, some of them actually have 6 or 7 different pieces to it, which gets complicated because you don't know where to look for different things. But I think a lot of them do have that idea of here's the presentation that was given, and then here's the hard numbers that exist in the budget book, so that there's not, you know, you're not really having your whole narrative and the history of your budget in your budget book. Your budget book is literally just, here's the final numbers, this is what everyone wants to know, let's break it down with the dollars.
So I would say, personal opinion here, I think the final document should tell a story. And I think that could quickly become a 150-page document, and that's not good. So I think it's good to clearly delineate, here's the numbers. So if you just care about the numbers, go to page 50. But actually, I don't remember which one it was now. Maybe Hamilton Wenham, that actually it's the annual report and fiscal budget, which I thought was a brilliant way of tying, schedule-wise, that doesn't work well. But to align it and have more things like this district strategy being part of a budget document, again, couldn't look like this exact form, but that same type of document where it paints the picture and says, here's where we're going, here are the numbers to get there. But I do think that our budget document's good, but it certainly has lots of places where it could get a lot better. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Goal. School committee goal. Seriously,
Yeah.
review that.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of good ones out there. I sent Brian screenshots of some of them because I just looked at the graphs and I thought, holy crow, you know, we talked for 3 pages and here's one graph that shows the whole thing. So, you know, I think there's, you know, every year things change, so it makes it difficult to do that re-examination every year, but sometimes where you can grab a good idea and just pull it in.
Yeah.
Viable.
Yeah, ultimately it's your document. You know, we produce it, but ultimately that becomes, you know, your one of 3 things you do. Hire and fire me, you evaluate me, hopefully not the fire part. You set policy and you set a budget. So you have a policy manual, you have an annual budget document. Those are your, so we can make it look like whatever you'd like to make. Well, I mean, not whatever, within reason, but but absolutely, I like the idea of making it a goal. What was I, 5E, district-wide event? I have not figured that out. District strategy for marketing, I do think we ultimately need a marketing strategy. I think we need to have someone who is a marketing expert help us with that. And obviously that costs money that we don't have at this point. But I do believe the annual report is an important marketing tool. And then handbooks, I know Kim will be very happy when this box is checked, but handbooks are now all aligned. I'm finishing tweaks on the high school, and then those are going to be in our attorney's hands. I'd hope to give them to you at tonight's meeting. The good part is that we're not doing any handbooks by paper anymore, or we're printing them off as needed, as requested. So to approve those in August is not a problem. So as soon as those are back, my goal is by mid-late July or very early August at the very latest, have those to you so you have 3 weeks to look at those ahead of time, so that when we come to the August meeting, you can approve those. And then moving forward, we're not going to have this level of review each year. So having them to you probably by May is going to be a non-issue because, again, this has been a lot of work that Kim has done to go through and make sure all the handbooks are aligned, expectations, policies, format, and then having our attorneys make sure that everything that should be in them is in them. Perhaps not everything that Mike Gilbert believes from the policy manual that should be in them, but we will then go through that as well.
Wrap this up. Can you?
That's it. That's.
Yeah. I was going to say, just to wrap this up, can you talk about your maybe top few, or the leadership team's top few, I guess, things that, obviously this is a huge document, in either have a priority but don't have a plan yet, or where do you really foresee putting your efforts in this document, and given that it's huge?
I don't know if I can answer that tonight. Okay. I would say to you, I feel like I'm proud of the work that we've done I mean, really it's been 2 years, but the work the first year to identify, and then this past year, focusing on a lot of things. I would gladly take other perspectives, but I sometimes feel like we're spreading ourselves a little thin as far as priorities, and there were a lot of boxes we were trying to check this year. I will say this concretely and confidently, this is way too big for a one-year document. And I know, wow, we outlasted Chris, so that's telling you something. So I remember Chris very early on saying, you know, sizable chunks, sizable bites, and I thought it was at first, and now I'm realizing that it was a little big. So certainly my hope is that when we bring a revised plan in September, that it's a kind of multi-year plan, and that's hard because no one wants to say, "Ooh, we're not going to get to that until." I would say that's probably the most frustrating part of it is I want to fix everything now, but these things take time. So I don't know. I mean, both feel free to jump in if there's something specific, but I can't think of something specifically that I would say is the top priority. I mean, the special education review, I would say, is absolutely very big in the use of data period as far as how we make decisions. Those are two that are very high in my priority because I think that special education review is a cultural piece that reaches every corner of this district. It is not just about special education. Ultimately, it talks about culture. That's an important discussion. So I think that's a pivotal item. I mean, I think the middle school schedule is, I think a lot of the hard work will be done, and now it's tweaking as we move forward. And then the use of data to continually make sure that we're doing things that are making impacts. Of course. Yeah.
I was just thinking too is that it's really important. This one just doesn't. We outlasted the microphone. That we have to look at the program, the implementation stage of where we are at with certain items, because if we're at a program install, like if we're beginning a new program and that doesn't become a priority, then there is the concern that will get kind of dropped off. So we need to look at those things that we've put into that particular category, or even into that kind of, not just program install, because that's barely the beginning, but just the initial implementation. Because again, those two pieces that we're looking at are at the very critical stage that if we don't stay on top of that and give it the support and the time and the attention it needs to develop, then that potentially could be just kind of fade in the background. So if that's where we're looking to look at that stage, and if we've already committed funds, resources, support, and then that if we do truly believe in that, such as PBIS, which I think we all agree is really important, that we put some resources and make that a priority, because otherwise it could potentially fade off, or have half of the district do it and the other half doesn't, and then you just don't get the full impact that you would if you had everybody on board with that. So just to just notice that where you are in implementation stage as well.
And that becomes important in a multi-year look ahead. So I know that was way longer than I anticipated, and I apologize. Are there things that you believe, you know, one word, topic, big idea, big concepts that you believe the plan as we move into next year should address that this doesn't? That doesn't currently?
Doesn't currently, no.
Or things specifically that you see as a major priority within this?
Just as I said before, I think looking at culture is important, because we've heard that, yes, absolutely.
Monique?
I don't want to bring up a can of worms, but I'm gonna. A couple of years ago, there was a lot of discussion about recess. Was that ever resolved? Or what are we doing with that? Or is that something we need to look at? I mean, maybe it's an old issue and it's dead, but I don't know that it was resolved. I'm just asking.
Yep.
I don't want to make anybody nervous.
So the issue was brought up, and it was an extra recess, right? There was a request for more recess. Newbury added an extra recess. I don't believe Salisbury and Pine Grove ever did.
No, because the teachers felt as though they were providing breaks within the classroom at very natural times, as opposed to saying it's 2:30, we're going out right now. So they were taking the cues from the students, and that's how it was communicated out to us, at least.
Yeah, the mechanics of recess is that it's hard to not schedule it, because then you end up with a 6th grade and a kindergarten out on the recess at the playground at the same time, and that doesn't work. So it has stuck at Newbury. It worked. they agreed that it made sense. The impetus came from a parent at Newbury who's a pediatrician, and they've embraced it.
So it's really not an issue anymore.
I have not heard about it since that year.
Drop it.
Nope.
I will say there's both in the budget, in the Senate budget currently, and I believe it's a House bill that's already gone through the Senate mandating 20 minutes a day, 100 minutes a week at the state level right now.
Wait, is Deb leaving?
She is. She's not feeling well.
Okay.
Which we would meet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just have something I'd like to say. At the elementary level, they take care of the children who are struggling. They do a good job at the kids who are excelling. And at the high school, they do well at helping the students who are excelling with AP classes. And I'm glad that we're focusing on the middle school, because I think that's where a lot of the kids start to drop off or lose interest and are not engaged. And also that is where we're losing our students to other schools because we're not focusing on those students. So I'm glad to see that we're focusing on those students, whether they're struggling in the middle or at higher.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I applaud that.
I agree. I agree. And I think that there's good work being done at the middle school. Again, change takes time. But one of the things, that we can talk about very briefly is for special education support, it's consistent but completely different at each of the three elementaries. The way qualifying is a very strict rubric, but for example, there are additional supports at Salisbury through Title I that don't exist at the other schools. So there might be a student receiving those services who may not need to access special education services, but then they come to the middle school and those supports don't exist, and then, oh no, what's happening? So those are the types of issues that we want to identify and be able to say, here's the plan. We support kids from the moment they come in, EI, if they're age 3, depending on up right through graduation, regardless of your ability, low, high, or in between. So.
Anything else?
Any other areas? Okay. And if you think of things, certainly my hope would be to have a little bit more of a formative discussion in August and then come back with a revised plan in September for approval. Thank you for indulging me for an hour plus.
Can we move on to the monthly report of superintendent of schools, please?
Yes. So you have an updated one in front of you. It has yellow on the top right. And I definitely can do this one quickly. You have my schedule, graduation. The majority of you were there. Several people asked about the speech and writing. There it is. As I published last year, we do a good job of publishing all of the colleges where this, or institutions or training programs where the students are attending. But it's just as impressive to look at the list of institutions where students are accepted where they may not be attending. There's many reasons for a student's choice of college or program, whether that be financial, location, you name it. So there are, I didn't put the total number. I'm sorry, I think it's 174. I believe it's 174 different institutions. Obviously, the majority of them are four-year colleges, but there's also two-year colleges, other training programs that are included. So takes up a lot of pages, but it's an impressive list. End-of-year events we've talked about. So again, NES is Thursday. I'm sorry, Pine Grove is Wednesday, NES Thursday, and Salisbury is Friday, June 21st, 2nd, and 20th, 21st, and 22nd. And then the middle school 8th grade is Friday, June 22nd at 12:30, and I will respond to you in regards to invitations to those. Safety update, I had hoped to be able to train on a revised protocol that all three police departments have agreed upon. There is a protocol that Officer Lucy, our SRO, has developed, and there has been some discussion between the three towns. The three-town police chiefs need to agree that in entirety before it's a safety procedure we implement. But also to note that tomorrow I'll be participating in just a brief overview of the ALICE training, which I know you've all heard about now. It's gone through many iterations. Police chiefs were very much against it when it was going after a person with a gun. Now it's much more about you follow your protocols, but when all else fails, use your instinct and keep yourself safe. So we are going to look to that. I believe there's buy-in for that. It's not free. So that's the next step, is figuring out timelines and costs to potentially implement that. And I think then we would aggressively pursue grants, other fundraising mechanisms, because it would be a one-time training cost. And then be able to, regardless, be able to train, even if it's not the full Alice program, by the fall when we return, be able to train teachers and students and staff in regards to the protocol that we agreed. It's the active shooter is the one missing protocol that we have. We have protocols for every other possible scenario you can come up with. But whether it's the homegrown one or a more formal Alice protocol, that we would be ready to do that in the fall.
Just ask, after recently seeing news reports out of Worcester, that you specifically look at the way that training is handled for the staff in the schools with Alice, because I was a bit shocked at the way that Worcester's doing it, just news report wise.
In regards to the little shock and awe and scare tactics?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can send you the news reports that I read,
Yeah.
but they were, yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's been my hesitation, is it's really hard to drill for an active shooter with young kids. I think a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were all like, yeah, we're not ready for that. I don't think there's anyone who disagrees that regardless of whether we're ready or not, we can't not. So, and I will say I got a call from Representative Mira, who knows someone who's using, it's not even facial recognition, it's an AI software that can be used with the cameras that we would potentially be installing at the entrances that can identify, even from bone structure. You could have a hat on, and it can identify the person as you're signing into a building. So there's obviously lots of questions about how that could be used, but he's connecting me with the president of that company because they're looking through Homeland Security to fund that and just trying to get a foray into schools. So we're certainly researching and trying to figure out ways to be safer, for sure. Last day of school, nothing new to report there. Homework review we talked about. Staffing reductions, just to confirm, 22.6 FTEs were reduced in the budget as it stands now. We're moving ahead with those. The majority of folks have been notified as of today. I will say, of those 22.6, I was pleased with the lower number that we had to actually reduce and actually lay off versus folks who were retiring, resigning. So we certainly are doing layoffs, but thankfully there were some other people who were choosing to leave, which obviously makes that a much easier situation. Student handbooks we talked about. Vaping forum we talked about. I believe I mentioned that to you last month. Now it has happened, and then the one kind of takeaway was this House Bill 4486, which is now with the Senate Ways and Means, that basically, in summary, adds vaping to the tobacco, gives the same restrictions to vaping products and paraphernalia as tobacco has. So that we see that as a big step forward, so that we can combat this, because it is a exploding problem as far as the pace at which it's growing. And kids think if it's not tobacco, it's all good. It's just fruit flavored. And you can look at a product that says no nicotine, and you look at the back and look, the ingredients include nicotine. So these kids are buying it online. They have no clue where it's coming from. They have no idea what they're smoking. And even if it were just these fruit flavored oils, they're inhaling oils. So it's scary. It's a scary thing that's happening. So it's certainly something that we had shared with parents. The first step is getting parents as partners, and then it's about educating kids and scaring them. That's what got people to stop smoking, is scaring them, and we need to get kids and everyone else who's doing it scared, because it's not safe and it's not good. So the reason for the updated report is middle school news. First, she's not here this evening, but to let you know that I signed a contract on Monday with Heidi Mongeau. She is currently the assistant principal at the Georgetown Middle School. She's also an adjunct professor in the Graduate School of Education at Gordon. Extensive decades experience at the middle school level, working with middle school students, and Al, as he came over to say, please, can we make this contract work? It is going to be a tremendous fit, and this is going to be a great ad for the middle school. Certainly, Rob Aslan has been a great addition. He was just added 2 years ago. He's been a great resource, great for the kids, great for the teachers, great for the community, and we're sad to see him go and wish him well in Chelmsford as a principal. But I'm very pleased with the find of getting Heidi hired, and look forward to her starting on July 1st. So. And then the final is the donation I already mentioned to you that TEF did fund a 3-year lease for a Chromebook cart at the middle school. Any other questions? Happy to answer.
All right, if we can move on to high school band members New York City trip.
So this, you have a report in your packet. Nothing new to report other than the finer details. You gave planning permission last month, and this is just a token approval to say, yes, you can go. Looks to be a great trip. I was going to offer to be a chaperone, but I couldn't go. It was the date didn't work.
Any questions? Can I get a motion to approve the Triton VPA trip to New York City on June 28th, 2018, for the purpose of seeing Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, please?
So moved. I'll second it.
Discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. All right. Kim, are you handling the 2018-2019 district PD plan?
That's all right. So what you have in front of you is the 2018-2019 professional development plan that was developed at the school level, but also with district representation. Through this process, we've tried to eliminate district PD days and school-based PD days. We're really trying to look at it as we are all in this together and we're all working collectively, sharing resources. I'm excited about the process that we took this year, which mirrored last year's, and it was our first year. We had groups come together, and one of the things that we did is we made sure that folks, as they were looking and planning for next year's PD, that they looked at the district's strategic plan, and they looked at their school improvement plan, and they looked at last year's professional development plan in addition to where they were in implementation with certain things. They also looked at supporting assessments that they had, so they looked at their past assessments, and as well as the teacher's professional goals. So really taking a much broader view of all of the needs, and then looking at the days and strategically placing stuff within the calendar. One example of where they strategically placed something is we know we have district assessments on writing. We know we need to continue to work on calibrating the results of that writing, as well as planning for instruction to meet the needs of those students. So they used a particular day that was mid-year following those assessments, where they would collect or gather with teachers to review those assessments. You will see that the PD plan, another new thing, it is aligned with the conditions as well as the district strategic plan and also the school improvement plans. We followed the state high-quality PD qualifications, and at the end of this particular year, we had each principal, along with their PD committee, go through the checklist to review whether or not certain PDs that were offered actually met the criteria. And even before, like, we get this view, so we're in the development process with them, but they also have to fill out a form, an MLP, that specifically states objectives, the activities, the student outcomes. So it's much more involved than, I feel like, this one sheet, and it really is meant to align all of our resources so that we're not working against, and it's not the district and the school, but we're really working collectively to improve the conditions and to address priorities, and not just a strategic plan at the district level, but the school plan, so that we're seen as one as opposed to district days, school days. And we're putting as much thought into each one as well, too. So that's just kind of the quick and dirty. I can answer any questions specifically on these. Happy to do so.
I love Monique's face.
Kim,
Yes.
how do you know that this is really going on and that the people are doing a good job? Who monitors this? I'll tell you, do you really?
So absolutely. Some of first of all, we have to know who the facilitator is. So
Yeah.
on any of these, we know, again, in the MLP, because some of them we're facilitating, or we're having outside people facilitate, or we're having the reading specialists facilitate, or the science ambassadors. So it's very tightly managed, because what we have to do is provide high-quality professional development. It's under the state guidelines. They have to earn PDPs, and we're a PDB provider by law. So we go through all of these. And again, you're just seeing the top layer of it. So underneath just this thing that would say, I don't know, Bay State Reading Institute, there is a much more detailed plan that will break down, minute, hour, whatever they're doing that particular day. In the past, it wasn't like that, Monique. It absolutely wasn't like that.
But like when you say something like align the curriculum.
Yep. So
that's a big black hole.
Yep. But you know what? We provide actually planning templates that they have to fill out, because like you said, when you give them something that broad, we need to bring it into a structure that holds them accountable for that time. So if we're doing vertical alignment, and we've done it with, say, I don't know, I'm just thinking of social studies. Well, social studies is adopting a new curriculum. They're given a blank template that basically says content area, areas that are aligned, areas that need to be addressed, and then there's that expectation too that they have to update the maps in Atlas as well. So we want documentation, and I think that's one of the biggest pieces that we've moved toward. At the end of each PD, there has to be some display or some product, we call it, that will absolutely demonstrate that there was quality learning being done on that day. And so that's been a big thing in the past, I'd say 2 years.
Produce a product, but how do you know the product is any good? I've been involved in these groups.
Right. No, absolutely.
Some of them are just baloney.
And you know what, I have to say, Monique, sometimes, because we review the products and we put them back on the teachers if we get something that doesn't meet the criteria, which we have. I mean, we have people who are applying, and Brian was part of that process just this past week. So we had, 16 teachers who applied for an independent study, which means that they get to take on some type of topic that they're interested in exploring. But again, we set the criteria, and there's a form that they have to fill out that's very involved. And then we met with representation from across all the districts, all the schools. So we had teachers, we had administrators, Brian was there, myself, Anna, and we went through all of the applications. Some of them didn't meet the criteria, so we pushed them back to the teachers, and some of them, if they just need a little bit of tweaking, maybe it was in the product or what they wanted to do, didn't align with the outcome, we pushed it back and said, could you give us some more information, help us clarify or understand? And then, so that's one level, and they revised their application, sent them back. So there's definitely checkpoints along the way, absolutely, because we don't have any time to waste, and there's a lot of work to be done. I think, looking at that district strategic plan, there are a lot of moving parts or a lot of pieces. If we don't plan our PD wisely and strategically, we are never going to get to all of those things, and that's a disservice to the students as well as the teachers who are trying to participate. So yeah, we set templates and we set checkpoints, and if they don't meet, and they don't always meet, we address that.
My concern is quality control, because a lot of times districts will do this. They'll go, well, you have independent study, but it really just means waste your time and plan something that you like. Or I've seen it.
Yeah, no, we have too, and we definitely, like I said, we have, and I can share with you the application process. And then they have this we call it the celebration of learning, which we had in the cafeteria just a couple weeks ago. They have to present their product and their presentation to the whole all of the district PD, the PD committees, and we go around with a checklist too. So when I say it's not just you have to approve your application and we go through, we want to see what you said you were going to do. And most of them did a fabulous job. And if they didn't, when we went back to review all of the feedback, they didn't get their PDPs, and then they were not given the opportunity the following year to participate in an independent study. So we've seen, and we have seen some of that. So for that purpose, we have checkpoints and then more checkpoints. Absolutely.
So can I just go on record saying it is a ton of work that Kim and Anna Bates do. So you have 2 people for a district staff of, call it 425 across the whole district, coordinating training in PD on a massive scale that's quality. And not only is the offering of quality, but the tracking of it is quality, because Kim will be the PDP Nazi, because at the end of the day, it's her signature saying,
Yeah, it is.
this meets the state
Embrace it.
criteria for a professional development point. It's not, it does nothing for us, it's about relicensure. So we are a proxy for the state. And so I'll tell you, she takes it seriously.
I do.
But
I
it is
know.
I mean,
do.
kudos to her and Anna, because it is a ton of work in what they do, to have just 2 people for an entire district.
Other questions for Kim? Can I get a motion to approve the district professional development plan for 2018-2019 as presented?
So moved. I'll second it.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? All right, fiscal 19 district operating budget?
So I don't think there's much new information to report. I will, you know that there's a town meeting scheduled for Monday night in Rowley, for Saturday, June 30th in Salisbury. On Monday night, the selectmen met. Neil Harrington, the town manager, did update them. This is the Salisbury Board of Selectmen, I'm sorry. In painting some options. If any warrant is going to be generated for the town meeting, it has to be generated by this Friday. There's not much new to report. I mean, basic message was they're going to wait and see what happens in Rowley on Monday night. And then the selectmen will be meeting again on Monday the 25th. So there's nothing new to discuss with the budget. I mean, I should note that TEF has talked about fundraising for the cameras. There's that $50,000 price tag, which is one-time funding. I have complete faith in TEF, but also know that $50,000 is a lot of money to raise. And that is something that we are still, we'd call it chomping at the bit, to release that vendor and get them paid so that we can make some progress on those cameras over the summer. So I don't know that we're at a point now where we make any changes. And then also there's at this point, I think the best case scenario for state revenues is still going to likely be a tick below what we assumed in that May 16th budget. So unless there's other discussion to have, I don't know if there's other changes that could be made at this point.
No, I think the only other thing that I would note is that we went through the school committee spending, and I think in speaking with Dina and getting some good advice from her, we're not going to renew our agreement with Mars. MASC gives us a lot of the services that we require as a school district, I think. We're getting our policy services through them. We do a lot of the conferences through them. So in the interest of saving money where we can, I think it makes sense to go with MASC exclusively as far as an association goes. And I just ask people to be extremely conscientious as we're doing registrations, since that's, I believe Patty said July 15th will probably be the date for the November conference. Yep, and the Summer Institute, you should have gotten an email about today. You know, they're absolutely worthwhile opportunities, but let's just try to be smart about how we use it, because we want to, you know, of all the people that should stay within their budget, we should try to really stay within our budget. Linda?
I have a question. The policy.
Sorry, I was getting messages from my boss. Just give me information.
The policy review that we're doing with MASC, did that include the handbooks?
It included, as a starting point, it included a review of handbooks, contracts, policy manual, to make sure there wasn't any lack of alignment. So, based on the amount of work it's been, I would say I would expect that to be another thorough review at the end.
So are they still going to look at our handbooks even after you're having?
They can, yeah. So our attorneys will, I mean, from a legal standpoint, they're going to say, you know, Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane practices and cover so many districts with school law. Here are all the policies you need to make sure are in your handbook. But then to make sure that in the end, as one final review, I mean, it was supposed to be a 2 to 3 year project. The cost is broken over 3 years. I mean, at this point, we've got a few more sections and we're done. So it's certainly going to bleed into next year. But I would certainly have that as an expectation. It's not my job to have that expectation, but I have that expectation.
I do
that,
too.
I'm glad to hear that. That at the end we say, here's the handbooks, here's the policy manual. How about one more review? Yeah. Yeah.
Any other comments on that? Michelle, would you authorize treasurer to borrow? Unless, sorry, Brian, did you have something else you wanted to say?
I was just going to say, what the boss was telling me, the July 15th is the early bird.
Oh.
So that's $100 cheaper for the registration. But if you do intend to go, so I think the message is, if you intend to go, definitely let us know now, because it saves $100 and we'll get our pick of hotel rooms. But then the second question is, if you don't think you're going to go, it's better to wait and pay $100 more than commit and get charged and have to pay the whatever, I don't know, having the total amount, and then not have people show up.
I was just going to ask, if you commit to go and then you have to change, is there a cancellation problem? Or do they just?
I think they're usually good about that if it's in advance. If people are,
of course in advance,
yes.
I'm just saying.
So if you say now we do the early bird and then, come August, September, you realize you can't go, I'm pretty sure they'll either transfer the membership or the registration to someone else or refund.
That I know you definitely
You definitely can
do.
transfer.
Right.
I think they'll refund as well if it's early enough.
Anything else? Michelle? Authorize treasurer to borrow?
Yes, this is an annual request to the school committee to authorize the treasurer to borrow short-term borrowings for if revenue should be delayed for any reason. So this would just be a short-term authorization, but we do it every year. We haven't had to do it in the couple of years since I've been here, at least. But it's a good thing to have on the books, because if we do need something, we can act on it very quickly, because we don't have to wait for another meeting.
Can I get a motion to authorize the district treasurer, with the approval of the chairperson of the school committee, to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of the revenue for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 17?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right. MASC nominations. I dropped the ball on this one, I will admit. Linda was nice enough to pick up that ball and run with it, though. She came to me about, I don't know what it was, 3 weeks ago now at this point, I think, and brought to my attention that if we wanted to do any nominations for MASC awards, that they were due on July 1st. So we would have to get those in. She had some definite ideas of the people that she wanted to nominate, so we've been working together on nomination process. There are 2 nominations that we'd like to get the approval of the committee to put forward. One of them is the lifetime membership nomination. The lifetime membership is a designation established to honor individuals who, through their service to the association, have made a significant contribution to the association. Life membership shall be limited to present or former school committee members who have made significant contributions to the association through participation as MASC board members or division officers, through service on various MASC committees and or external statewide committees, commissions, or task forces representing the interests of MASC. I'd ask Linda to read at least the top section of our nomination.
Dina has given so many hours of her life over the years for the good of the Triton Regional School District and the children of Massachusetts. She has advocated for the best and broadest education possible for every student, working to ensure that appropriate resources and policies were in place. Dina is a true leader, whether serving as an officer of the committee, hosting events, or mentoring new members. She is meticulous in her work, making sure that every detail is covered and each open issue is resolved. The school committee has been lucky to have her enthusiasm, good-natured spirit, and steady hand at the helm, and we hope you will consider her for this honor.
We'd also like to nominate a member for the Lifetime Achievement Award. Lifetime Achievement is a designation established to honor individuals who, through their service to their community and their local school committee, have exhibited the best characteristics of public service. Lifetime Achievement shall be limited to present or former school committee members who have 10 years of elective service in the community or in non-elective service to public education as a volunteer, member of the public school faculty, or benefactor of public schools, including not less than 2 terms on the school committee.
So Deb has devoted her time and wisdom to the Triton district. She has made tough decisions based solely on what was best for our students. Deb has spent countless hours studying complex issues like student achievement data, school financing, contacting our state legislators to support regional schools, and attending many school and district events. She has donated significant time beyond the committee to the district as well as our community, bringing her love of fitness to our seniors at the Salisbury Senior Center and the students at Triton summer programs. Deb has also spends time with young readers at Salisbury Elementary School, and she has volunteered endless hours at the East Parish United Methodist Church in Salisbury. She has been a passionate advocate and has the best interest of our students' success at heart in all that she does, and we appreciate you to honor her with this as well.
So first, I'd like to thank you, Dina, and unfortunately we missed having Deb here, but I'm going to see her tomorrow morning, so all good. I was hoping to have the final forms done tonight, but we're still waiting on some information from MASC, which Dina can probably actually fill in for us. Sure. We were very thankful for your bio, actually, because we were going back and pulling all the years, and then we're like, oh, wait, Dina has it all done for us already. Attention to detail, exactly.
Just that color coding, didn't it?
So I would welcome, I mean, Linda and I tried to do our best to come up with kind of what we felt was the reasoning for the whole committee to put forward these individuals for these awards. But I would welcome if any of the members of the committee have anything that they want to add to that or, you know, supplement, but we'd be happy to incorporate that in before we actually fill out the forms and submit them to MASC. I would ask that we have a motion to nominate Dina Sullivan for the Life Membership Award and Deb Choate for the Lifetime Achievement Award for MASC, please.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Brian has something to say.
Wanted to vote.
Oh. All in favor? Unanimous.
Can I just say I am very honored and very surprised.
I should have asked you if you'd accept first.
I was going to say.
Sorry about that.
What, you're going to decline?
No. I'm stunned. I really am. But I hope this doesn't mean you're pushing me away off this committee, because I'm not leaving. But I appreciate this. I truly do. And it's work that I love.
And it's past time. I think that was the reasoning when Linda and I talked about this. It was in no way indicative of anything for the future. It was the idea that it's past time to have this done. And I understand it's difficult when you're chair and vice chair to actually do this for yourselves. But now that, you know, you're in a position that someone else can do it for you, I am more than happy to do that.
I appreciate it. I truly do.
And when I asked her about this, I says I'd like to do this while they're still on the committee and not doing it when you've decided to not be on the, so it's no ways pushing you off.
Good. All right. Moving on, the superintendent evaluation end of year. Sorry, let me get my paperwork back under control. All right. So first of all, I appreciate everyone getting their evaluations in for Brian. I pulled together the final report. This in no way includes all of the information. It would have been 7 pages long, I think, if I literally pulled every single piece of data over. So on the first page, you'll see the summary of the overall scores. They were largely positive, I would say. His overall rating from the committee was a proficient. I used just a numerical kind of averaging system, trying to weight these out since it is a little bit of a funky system to get these. But you can see his aggregate ratings across the bottom, and then his overall rating in the blue box in the bottom right-hand corner. I don't want to go through and read all of the all of the comments, because obviously you can read them for yourself, but I mean, I think there's an understanding of the current environment that we're operating in and the tremendous amount of work that the superintendent has been able to do within that environment, which I think we would all say is not optimal at this point. So kudos to him for doing that. And I hope everyone will read through. And I know Patty sent out by email a link that had PDF copies of all the individual documents within them. And I don't know if she was talking about printing up paper copies. So she has
Copy
those
of all,
if anyone wants to go through the individual ones as well. So I appreciate that. And I have an action, but I don't think it belongs to this. So I believe the action that I need to make is to request an approval for the
I'll take some nominations too if there's something.
for the superintendent's evaluation for the January 2018 to June 2018 timeframe.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
I would just like to say, I think due to the lateness of the hour, there's not going to be much discussion. I hope
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we can in August, because I did look at all the individual responses and found it fascinating that we were all looking at different things. And I think that warrants some discussion, because I thought it was great how there was a wide view.
Yes. And I have to say there were a number of takeaway items in there that I was actually going to ping either you or Deb and just see how they've been handled in the past. And Deb came to me and said, "Can we talk anyway?" So I said, "By all means," because I've got questions for you as well. So I figured I would ask her.
Can I just use that as an opportunity to talk about the importance then of calibration? So for this, it works because there's 9 different views and you get to average them. That's not how it works when we have 2 administrators evaluating a teacher. So it's hard because, like you said, Dina, that's a positive thing, that the way you view something is different than the way Paul views it and the way Maureen views. So that's a value, but speaks to the challenge of calibrating evaluation as a general rule. So, but thank you for the evaluation. I believe it's very fair. Thank you. Thank you.
Subcommittee reports and action items, policy and advocacy subcommittee. Linda?
We've kind of put our meetings on hold as Section J is huge, and a lot of that review has to come from the administration, because I don't know if things have changed before we put the vote to accept them. So I don't think we're going to meet until either August or September. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say I had it on as a TBD, whether you had it in August or September.
Well, it depends on you. And if you've
We'll be
got
ready in
your
August.
Section J in
I'm ready
order.
in August. We have problems. So yes, we can do it in maybe that week, the week after.
I was thinking more like September.
September's great. More time is not a bad thing.
No.
I'll be out of the country.
And that was another reason. No, I didn't know that.
Anything else, Linda?
Oh, no, that is all.
Okay. Finance subcommittee, we've been going through budget stuff here, so there are no surprises as to what's been happening in subcommittee. Our next scheduled meeting is the 27th, and Monique wanted to pull specifically
my
expenditure,
usual,
right?
Yeah, my usual here. Charter school tuition, school choice tuition, tuition to other districts. There's a large encumbrance. Is that because we can't pay the bills?
No, we are billed on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
So I encumber what I'm anticipating we pay till the end of the year.
All right. So you don't have, you can pay this?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
An encumbrance is an IOU.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's money that we know we're
No,
going
the
to
state
pay.
charges us on a
No, but
monthly
we're
basis,
almost
and I'm
done.
certainly not going to pay them before they charge me.
All right. No,
So-
because I just thought it was because we were ending the end of the budget year.
Oh, yeah,
So I thought that was a lot of money to owe in the next 2 weeks. That's why I had the question.
No, that's
look at the date, though. Yeah.
that's 2 months worth of assessment. So
Okay.
that would
So
be
you're
your
all
May
set
and
with
June
that.
assessment. Yep.
And personnel negotiations, Dina?
We were supposed to meet today, but as Linda indicated, due to the tremendous amount of time that the budget has been taking up of our superintendent's time.
Everyone, not just me.
Well, yes, but since
But since I'm the one doing that.
yeah, exactly. We postponed our meeting, and again, we'll probably begin meeting in August.
And I guess it may or may not be before our next full committee meeting, but I mean, there's the assumption that you'll be reorganizing at those meetings as you have them next. And if you can just let me know if there's a change in chairmanship and who that is, or just let me know, period, who the chair is. Once that's done, I would appreciate it. All right, and we had no correspondence, and I believe that's it. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
No.
Yes, yes.
All in favor? All right.
Okay, we actually outlast the HVAC system. Just
I
get-
got very quiet.
Oh, it kicks off at
did.
10
I
o'clock.
thought I've never heard it that quiet before.
Really quiet.
I believe Monique did.
Yes.